response that this film gets. Again, it's the bottom of this list, which is a little stunning to me, actually. I thought it'd be a little bit higher, in all honesty. But I'm somebody that appreciates when you jam together a couple, like, test pilots or test episodes. My favorite... No, I shouldn't say my favorite. A film I enjoy immensely, despite it being bad, is the Sonic the Hedgehog film, which is like this. A couple episodes, or they jam together into a feature-length film. I like that. I really adore that like type of approach when it comes to telling a story. But I also admit that like it is hindered by this, where I'm like, wow, that plot thread just faded from my fingers into the void. And I don't know, it was a lot. It was a lot taken at once. I really wanted to be. I really would. As I was watching this, I was like, I'd rather be watching the series. But I enjoyed it for these little like short segments because it felt like, wow, this is a nice sampler. I got to try a couple dishes here. I liked seeing Dooku in CG. I just loved that. I liked look this up real fast. When James Arnold Taylor took over for like this little. Yeah, I enjoyed him for voicing Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he sounded a lot like Ian McGregor.
Yep, I have to speak up for that. And again, I love the premise of Ahsoka being a little Padawan. I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, like in general, like when I first saw Ahsoka, I did not like her at all. And once again, I was mad that it was very inconsistent with what it was already established with the prequels. But as watching the series on, Ahsoka ended up being one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. So this had to lay the foundation of her, and I thought it was decent. It was pretty introduction to her.
Yeah, actually, surprisingly enough, from the three of us, none of us actually have the Clone Wars at the bottom of our list. Beefaloh actually has us at number 8, while D-WIZZLE and I have it at number 10. So it's not really any of us that really hate the movie all that much. The real issue that comes to this movie, though, are the critics. The critics are not really huge on the critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, it got an 18%.
Jesus.
Along with Metacritic actually gave it a 35%, and usually Metacritic is a little bit more harsh than Rotten Tomatoes.
Maybe I'm too soft to this film. Keeping that in mind, where I'm like, maybe I should look at you a little differently after hearing those scores, because now it makes me want to go back and reapproach. Because again, after other films I want to tear into like a dog into steak, this film being so low on average, and then me being like, "Oh, this is delightful." And so I feel like a dissonance now. I really want to go back and rewatch this one more time.
Yeah, because I actually watched this recently because I'm rewatching the entire series before season 7 comes out. But this definitely does not deserve. Oh, what percent is it?
18% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Around the same rating as Cats and the new Hellboy movie, which I completely disagree with.
But then again, it was also in a time when Clone Wars was just kind of like, oh, we're gonna plop a movie here, as opposed to Cats and Hellboy that have had time to go into do good in marketing, or at least decent from what I hear. Clone Wars was just kind of there, so it didn't really give the community enough time to dive deep into the movies, so they were just kind of like, "What? This doesn't really look all that interesting. It doesn't really look good. We're just gonna give it a bad rating." Although I do understand a little bit on the 18%, because even though it does feel like a couple episodes of the Clone Wars being put into a movie, I do kind of like that core concept if you're trying to promote your show. But at the same time, the arc that they chose for this movie is probably one of the worst ideas that they would have ever gone for when going into making this movie. Who would have ever thought in the writer's room that it was a good idea to give Jabba the Hutt a son, when he already kind of had a son in the Phantom Menace, if you guys didn't catch up on that?
And then what makes even less sense is that Jabba apparently has a cousin that speaks fluent English. For no reason. For no reason. And doesn't even reveal themselves as one of the main villains until 15 to 20 minutes left in the film. Yeah. What? Yeah, no.
No. It
doesn't mix well. It just doesn't.
Yeah,
I
but
think,
okay. Go ahead.
I'm not gonna lie. I think what would help improve my score for this film is knowing all the lore that the Clone Wars series would go on to add, where it gets really good.
Right.
So I think that has softened my blow of this film immensely.
Yeah.
Where I go, yeah, this is definitely building into something, and that's what this film has, is that potential. But you're right, the silly lore with Jabba's cousin speaking English, which also that was a bus that I wasn't ready to get hit by.
If I had a kid, I'm telling you, if I had a kid right now and they were the ones writing out the script for the Clone Wars, they would have easily figured out a better arc than whatever they chose for the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Like just straight up. Like this arc was just not good.
Yeah, it's like, I get you want to establish Ahsoka Tano because she ends up being a main factor of the show. That's fine. But it's like, why the Jabba crap? Like, you brought Darth Maul back. You brought Asajj Ventress back. There's stuff with Boba Fett that's more interesting. Or like Dave Filoni hasn't gotten to that stuff yet, so it's probably why we didn't get it. But it's like, why would you choose this silly stuff? You know, because it seemed like you were trying to get away from the silly crap from the prequels, but nope, it's once again stupid crap with the Jabba's son farting crap. I'm like, oh god, it's Phantom Menace crap again.
Even the General Krell arc would have been useful to use, because that was actually one of my favorite arcs of the Clone Wars. Is the General Krell arc. And yeah, the Darth Maul arc was pretty cool too. That would have been really interesting to bring him back. And that would have definitely helped the marketing for this movie, because a lot of people just love Darth Maul for absolutely no reason. But that's just my opinion.
He's a great character.
That is just my opinion though. But yeah, just this arc, this Jabba's son, really? We're going with the Hutt Clan's arc? I mean, I know, like the relationship, like set aside the arc that they chose, the relationships and the character connections within this movie are actually pretty solid. I did like this version of Anakin. This is actually one of my favorite versions of Anakin in general.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I loved about the Clone Wars in general, is that they made Anakin more of a likable character, you know, and more of a relatable character, and you actually see the friendship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and I actually do like the development that he has with Ahsoka, and it makes me buy, you know, him having an apprentice, like, maybe like that type of stuff. And Padme is a better character too, even though she's only in it for like the last half an hour of the movie too. Right. And General Grievous, by the way, is not even in the movie. Nope.
Which is an L. General Grievous needs to be. Okay, I got some hot takes on him because I love him. Yes. I want to see him more.
Yeah. We should have seen him in general in the Clone Wars instead of waiting until the show.
Yeah.
Listen, every second General Grievous isn't in my Star Wars films, I'm upset now.
we just need a General Grievous a Star Wars story on Disney Plus. Like, we need a Disney show for General Grievous.
Disney, make it a thing. Disney, please.
Yes. After the miniseries. Come on.
All right, I think we're.
I think. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I was gonna say, just to close this out. I think what this film really, to me, was like, when I think about like all the weird stuff they added in, what it would later become, I feel panned a little bit because, you know, it wasn't on TV, which is what this needs to be on. This needed to be a made-for-TV film. Yeah. It doesn't need to be. It didn't, because imagining this, because I don't remember if I saw this in theaters when I was a child, because it didn't have that big an impact on me as a kid, and I thought Ahsoka was miserable because I've never been. I have grown to like scrappy little apprentice characters, especially Ahsoka, over time, and like again, as someone who only kind of followed the Clone Wars series ultimately, but still appreciates what they did with her. The film's introduction of her feels so cliched to me, where I was just like, I'm miserable.
Yeah. It also just kind of feels like it just feels off just to start off with a movie and then the show, instead of just having to introduce characters over time throughout seasons and episodes with shows first and then a movie to come out afterwards.
you want to cast, you want to build up a world, and that's why I think this film really lacks with that scope, where it has the scope of a large world, but it has the issue of we're going to bum rush you immediately with all of this information.
Yeah, it doesn't help that the show overall was aired out of order.
Right. And that's actually one thing, I'm not meaning to go off track a little bit, but that's actually one thing that I was a little surprised about with Teen Titans Go, is that they started off with, even though it didn't really start off very well, like with their show, it did get a little bit better over time, and it did progress, and just to figure out what they wanted to be, so that by the time their movie came out, they knew what they wanted to be, and they had a set plan. So their movie actually was more of a success than it was supposed to, but it still worked.
Well, I remember the thing of the movie, for me, keep in mind, I don't follow Teen Titans Go. I watched the original Teen Titans show.
Well, everyone has.
I don't really,
Nope.
I don't hate on its existence. With that film in particular, not to go off on this tangent, that they had a voice actress from Teen Titans Go promise that if the film did well, we would get a classic Teen Titans revival or episode or something. And I feel like that drove at least a couple people to go see that movie.
And then they trick us and just give us Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go.
I mean, we did, but I mean, was that movie any good?
It was alright.
It was alright.
All
right, well, I think that pretty much wraps up Clone Wars, so I think we're about ready to move on. Moving on to number 11, this is also probably shouldn't really come off much of a surprise, but I don't really agree with this movie being a little bit too low, is Attack of the Clones, which racked up at 27 points in total.
Oh, boy.
Well, I am... So
yeah, I know that Beefaloh actually has this at the very bottom of his list. He has this at number 2.
This is so I put it at the bottom because I was the most. It's okay. Rewatching Attack of the Clones, it's kind of like wondering what ideas they were like. What were they trying? Okay. Oh wow! Now I'm as jumbled as the film is now.
Yeah,
it's caused psychic damage. Attack of the Clones to me is a film that had to be an integral. It has to keep the story moving. I think it's punctuated by the signature awkward dialogue. It is surrounded by a pointless feeling battle with Count Dooku at the end, where Anakin has to get his hand sliced off to sync up with Luke, having the middle film. Like Skywalker loses a hand in the middle film. That tradition that suddenly became a pattern, and there was a lot of aggressive CG in this film that wounded me immensely, where it has not aged well at all.
Yeah, the CGI in this movie is probably some of the worst we've seen in the Star Wars franchise. I think this movie actually does have the worst CGI in the franchise.
Now, I try to give Lucas a little leeway with the CGI environment because it's the first of its kind. I feel like if we didn't get it in this movie, we wouldn't get it in future films like Avatar and other stuff like that help perfect it, like Jungle Book and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like way to make like the sacrifice play and helping other directors get a better idea of how they want their movies to look.
I would give kudos for that if it weren't for the fact that this film looks like a PS1 game.
Yes, it does.
Well, like, I think there were other films that were utilizing CGI to much greater effect because they did it more sparingly, and I think this film could have been... And this is also during the time, I think... Was this when they were remastering the original trilogy? Like, wasn't this when those started to come out with the CGI additions?
I think they were remastering it in, like... I don't know. It's kind of weird with how they worked with the original trilogy. It was, like, they came out with, like, the special editions in theaters in 1997, and then they did something different in 2004, which came out after Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, okay, so this now hurts a little bit less than initially, but it stings in the... This is going to precede what is going to be a complete... warping of what people originally saw, but right. it was the beginning of the CGI binge because it's funny. The Phantom Menace has some horrible looking scenes, but I feel like the visuals were way more imaginative, and there was definitely like a sense of like wonder when they're going to like where to going to visit the Gungans, right? Like there's like a sense of like scale, scope, and just I imagine that like these concept art designs being fleshed out beautifully. With this film, I was like, we're in a desert, we're in another desert, we're in another desert, we're in a cool cyberpunk city, and then we're in a futuristic city, and we're in a desert.
Yeah,
and the creatures looks like toys.
Yeah, I will slightly disagree with some of the Phantom Menace. I mean, yeah, there were some effects that didn't look very good, but like, though, going off of what you're saying, like there was something that just felt more tangible in the Phantom Menace. Like stuff didn't feel as much of a set as it does in Attack of the Clones. Like even like when Anakin and Padme are talking in a room, like that feels like a set, even though it's not a environment. Or like the only tangible thing I really remembered, if it actually is like the Tatooine stuff felt the most tangible out of everything else in the movie. But yeah, just everything just felt artificial, good, because Revenge of the Sith fixed a lot of that. But like this one, it's just like, why does this feel like a cutscene from a video game?
Yeah, why does this feel like
even with the Tatooine stuff? I feel like things started like taking off like by the time we were getting off in Naboo anyway, like not just with effects and like tangibility, but also within characters. Because I think I've said this to you too, Dwayne, just a couple days ago, that the relationship between Anakin and Padme was not good on Naboo, but by the time we're off Naboo and we start to get this subplot of Anakin had to go search for his mother on Tatooine. That's when the relationship actually kind of started building up and getting better for me, because they actually started respecting each other's responsibilities. And Padme even understands that. Like, she was brave enough to leave her own home planet just for this one boy.
Oh, yeah. So I agree with that 100%. The romance in this movie is atrocious.
It is atrocious, but it does get better over time to make it seem like it's not entirely useless. Like, you could see the characterization between the two.
Yeah, it's like I am holding on to some friendship bits that they built in the Phantom Menace, and there's some that's like that builds off of it here, but it's just when they're trying to do the romantic aspect, something just feels very
well. What it feels like is the prequels were written where George Lucas would write it, and then the actors would go, and then they and George Lucas's wife at the time would basically polish the script into something that was actually believable, or there'd be improvised lines that help convey a sense of relationship, which the original trilogy definitely has a really good sense of. When I watched Attack of the Clones and I see the romance of this, I could definitely see George Lucas basically being like, "Oh, hey, I just threw down some, just a couple lines here that make the relationship, the real romance between Anakin and Padme that much sweeter, and everything that happens hurt much more." And then it's like, you expect me to take the lines in the scenarios of this film where they're laughing and frolicking in a field? What? I mean,
and that's the best scene they have.
That's the best scene on Naboo that they have. On Naboo. That's the key.
Yeah.
It feels so fairy tale, and I guess that's the point. It feels.
I'm fine with fairy tales in Star Wars, but
I was gonna say, Star Wars was mainly supposed to appeal to kids. Whenever you say something Star Wars is
story for sure.
I was gonna say, by the time you start talking about Star Wars being more about it's a family movie, but once you start saying Star Wars is mainly streamlined for adults, that was a set age group was for adults, then we start getting a little bit off board, because it was intentionally supposed to be mainly made for kids.
Yes. So then when you're trying to have adult romance and talking about politics and trade disputes, that's when things
just get boring.
Well, I think I have to give this film applause though, because one of the, even though again the Genndy Tartakovsky specials did this a little bit better from what I've seen. Again, I have to go and appreciate them like an adult now. I appreciate what this film did with Anakin and his brutal "I'm going to go kill the sand people" scene.
That was actually great. That was great.
That was a good scene. That was.
I feel like what makes that scene work is not the dialogue, it's just imagining the scenario of your mom is brutalized and murdered by these roving tribe of raiding peoples, and Anakin, in a moment of just sheer Sith hatred, you see the seed get planted. I was gonna say,
like, what would you like? How would you react if you were ever put into Anakin's shoes? Like, how would you react?
The thing is that too, Jedi. I think this film also establishes a little bit of the harshness of the Jedi code as well. Inadvertently, I will say, inadvertently establishes this through this, because I don't know how intentional it was, but what I read into it a little bit is that, like, they're so prim and proper and about order and not getting vengeance that something like the Sand People killing people can occur, where it's not preventable, which is drive to interfere with such things. But the Jedi have no need to interfere with the natural order of the world. Shmi knew back and be like, I have to go kick some ass real quick.
Which is why it frustrates me that Lucas feels the need to shove that down our throats with unnecessary dialogue, because right after that we have that scene with Anakin saying, I killed the men, the women, the children too, slaughtered them like animals. Like, that was not necessary. We already got what he was feeling when he was killing those Tusken Raiders. Like, we didn't need another dialogue telling us
it's Hideo Kojima's bluntness, where it's a baseball bat of dialogue, where it's like, hey audience, did you get what happened?
Yeah.
But
the main thing that frustrates me is because, like, there is really great ideas in this movie, but the fact that Lucas doesn't trust the audience to have us feel the emotions that they're conveying without telling us, and then trying to, and also the stuff with the dialogue with the romance is too much, and then it makes the set pieces towards the end feel kind of hollow because it just feels artificial with the dialogue, you know?
Right.
I think, too, it's like, it's... Wait,
take your
what's
time.
I had to look up, like, her last quote. I think, is it, I'm so proud of you, Annie, so proud. I miss you so much. Now I am complete. Which is something about that. Yeah, that's, like, a really weird last quote. Like, I don't feel like that's how a human would speak, which Star Wars, of course, is very alien, but there's I guess what it is kind of like rusty pipes of dialogue, where it's just, here are these, we have to link these ideas together, just write down this.
I think that one was okay, because when she said, like, now I'm complete, now she feels like she can release and she can pass away.
I feel that.
Time, you know?
But I feel like it wouldn't be. I feel like you wouldn't say now I am complete or something like that. Just touches me. Or like, it's a little weird. But I think that moment, though, I think the overall, you can't crush that moment in terms of, like, what it's trying to do. Like, I just respected that immensely, that you wanted to show. Because again, there's this raw idea where I feel like this film's like a lot of concept maps. Like, as somebody who writes, these are things that I would write as, like, a draft thing, where I'm like, I need the character to say something along these lines. Then you go back and you polish it aggressively into human-sounding dialogue or organic dialogue. And it feels like Lucas was like, all right, I think what I wrote here was fine enough to publish. And no one stopped him.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, yeah, I do see where Beef is coming with that. It does feel like that exchange with Anakin and his mom, it did feel like it was just coming right off of a script instead of having it feel natural with how it's supposed to be said. But definitely, like, even if we didn't get anything, like, any of that dialogue, we already got, like, the general feeling of, like, yeah, by the time Anakin got there, you knew that Anakin's mom was going to die just by looking at her.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't even need to say a single word, and we knew immediately that Anakin's mom was dying.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was predictable, but I still was like, there's a sense of, like, again, following the narrative of Anakin's mom, who, a character I don't really care about, keep in mind. She's definitely a device that has to die in order to start this, in order to plant the seeds of darkness of feeling powerlessness. That's what this scene introduces, is Anakin being powerless and unable to change fates, unable to change things. So even knowing that she has to be a device for this, like, having already seen the film again, I'm still like, this is a compelling moment. if this were in the hands of a more competent writer or a better editing team, you really could have sold me on this. Right. I don't really like this character, but just this scenario. And that's what this film feels like. It's just these scenarios are interesting or compelling. Again, you have the clone again in the little Coliseum scene where everyone's tied up and you have a little bit of snappy banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin, which those are artificial, but at least I appreciated that they were trying to have a dynamic. Again, that's what it feels. Yeah. Oh god, I gotta talk about the set piece of this film too. Like the conveyor belt sequence feels very video game-esque. Like I felt like I was playing that PS1 Star Wars game that had like tank controls. I felt like I was just playing where I'm like, I just got warped to like 1999 with a PS1 controller in my hand.
Yeah, and also, this is the first and only movie to have a bunch of Jedi fighting at the same time. Why does it feel underwhelming? There's no technique. There's no, because the choreography in The Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith were really good. But this one felt like a significant step backwards because, I'm watching all these Jedi fight in the Coliseum and I don't see any technique. It literally feels like they're deers in headlights waving around swords. The only people doing
it's a rave, buddy. It's a glowstick rave.
Yeah, it does look like at some moments that when you see a Jedi jumping off of a pillar or something, and when they're kicking droids and whatnot, it doesn't even look like that they are. It just looks like they're wanting to do stuff, and then they just give it to the editing team, and then they went to their computers and see what they could work with. That's instantly what it felt like.
Yeah, because if you watch the behind the scenes stuff on DVDs and Blu-rays, they were working with nothing. They were in a big blue screen area and just pretending that stuff was there.
And that was all the prequels. That wasn't in Attack. That wasn't just in Attack of the Clones. That was Phantom Menace. That was Revenge of the Sith. That was all three of them.
You know what this reminds me of is a really depressing. I don't know if the story was true or not, but apparently the scene of Sir Ian McKellen in The Lord of the Rings being this isn't acting. When I think he was doing either The Hobbit or one of the Lord of the Rings film, where he just struggled because there's no environment around him. This film reminds me of what it must take. And the thing is, the part of that scene when all the Jedi rush out and are fighting, in the Battle of Geonosia, the thing about this that hurts is that we know every Star Wars fan. I mean, I'm more of a casual fan, but I know my father was huge into it, and again, he and I talked through each of these films. This is why I'm kind of prepared for this discussion in a way, is my dad he basically was like, hey, Julian, we need to talk Star Wars, and was like, watch this film real quick. Or he would take me out of school to go see these films. Every single Jedi there has a particular style they could have exemplified.
Yes.
Every single one of them. And that's what hurts the most, is that we get glow stick flailing when we could have had, because there's so many things in the lore, in this encyclopedia my dad got me. They comment on each one. Kit Fisto has a style, even, I believe. Where I'm there's this neat thing where I really wanted to see what this would look like. I expect to see some of them doing a very proper fencing type stance. We could have had this scene, but instead everyone's swinging them like foam bats, which they're props.
Yes.
It went from in Phantom Menace and in Revenge of the Sith. Those were kind of watching. In Revenge of the Sith, especially with its choreography, which I had to recall the old post that was about what's a circle parry and why are these techniques so bizarre to us, but they visually were striking, is because they're based on really impractical but cool fencing maneuvers because you're holding a giant hitbox or giant laser sword.
Right.
But
I'm not even expecting everyone to flip around or do fast movements. Not all the Jedi have to do that. Yeah, just
Yoda got something. Dooku gets generic style, but Yoda got something even.
Are you one of the people that are mixed about him pulling out a lightsaber?
With Yoda? A part of me feels hurt, and it's this is too comical, and I'm too busy chuckling immensely. But a part of me is also you know what? At a certain point, watching these prequels, you really start to vibe, and that's what happened to me. I started to vibe with these films. Where I'm I don't like it, but I'm accepting this. This is fine. Him doing flips in the air feels irrational and stupid, but I'm here for this.
Yeah. It's pretty much how I
But-
felt. Because I loved it when I saw it in the theater, and then I started watching it at home, and I'm like, wait, this feels wrong. But then I watched another time, I'm like, this is cool.
I gotta do some high action kung fu maneuvers.
Yeah,
I'm like, what are you
figuring out
for?
the concept of Yoda even pulling out a lightsaber? It feels like it just feels wrong at the end, because at the end of the day, a lightsaber isn't what really makes a Jedi. And Yoda was kind of like the embodiment of, like, you know, the way of the Jedi is the way of the Force and whatnot. And so for him to pull out a lightsaber, that statement alone is pretty much just debunked, because now we could just see Yoda doing things with a lightsaber that no other Jedi could do, but
Yeah, of course.
we only see him do it in like 2 movies, and both times it doesn't even do anything.
Okay, so a video game comparison is going to bring up, about the choreography fight-wise. It's kind of like, so we all know Star Wars was in Soul Calibur back in the day. It's kind of like the first Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith were kind of like Soul Calibur, where they have these really intricate one-on-one fights with, like, you know, fully mapped out, like, even if it's sloppy, which, again, I will deride those films when I get to them for having sloppy fight choreography. It was still kind of like, okay, one-on-one battles. We still get to see these, like, elaborate duels or 2-on-1s where we could see a single Jedi, a Sith repel 2 Jedi. This film was kind of like a Dynasty Warriors, where all of a sudden you just get a horde, and I can't tell what's happening, but people are getting sliced, and we just, we're watching a bounty hunter get his head cut off as a young Jango Fett realizes his dad is dead.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
Rip. Is it Jango that's the kid, or Boba that's... It's Jango that's the kid, right? Yeah.
It's Boba that's the kid.
Boba's the kid. Fuck! Yeah, Boba's the child.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get Boba grasping the head of his father.
And the head doesn't drop out of the helmet. Well, of course, that'd be a little bit too graphic. I like to think that, again, because of giant heat sword instantly cauterizing, because it's we all know it just burns you immensely. It's just that he got, like, factory sealed into the helmet, so the head can't tumble out. It's kind of like a smooth surface down there. All right.
To the helmet.
All right.
That's how I made peace with that. Another great scene, though. I do like how they set the clones up in this film.
Oh yeah, that was really interesting.
I love Obi-Wan going to investigate. Like, I think that, as pointless as it was necessary to set up the nature of the army and the difference and contrast between what the army is with the cloning technology and why they're so disposable and why they're so goddamn many.
All right, and this is stuff that they ran more in the Clone Wars show, but yeah, I definitely like seeing this stuff in this movie.
I just like the tease, and I do like the initial, like, all right, here's the first appearance of Jango riding off with the ship. I was like, all right, cool.
Yep.
Because it builds up the intrigue as to, like, who's trying to assassinate Padme. So it's trying to follow that line too, and I was like, this subplot is a little weak because it's Palpatine trying to get Padme killed, but he doesn't want to do that directly. So he has what is it? I think it's either he has Boba or no Dooku, who has Boba, who has that person that shoots things through the window or ejects bugs into the room.
This is the stupidest assassination attempt I have ever seen. You literally blown up the room with a spaceship. Why are you putting worms in the room?
You can just blast the room.
It was like a chain of deals. It's like Palpatine's like, do it. And then Dooku goes, do it. And then Boba goes, do it. And then this lowly assassin who only exists to get killed tells the bugs to do it. And then the bugs fail. And then the little bounty hunter, I forget the bounty hunter that dies' name.
Zam Wessel was the bounty hunter.
Wait, what was it again? Repeat that, please.
Zam Wessel.
Zam Wessel. Wow. That's a fucking name. That's... Zam...
What a name. What a typical Star Wars name.
I mean, it's that, and also the other name of Star Wars history that I like to bring up, Ellen, what is it? What's the fucking name? Sleaze Bogano is the last name, but forget the first one. But it's like the bad guy that does the drug deal in one of the films, where it's like, oh, Yeah, it's something sleazebagano. I'm like, wow, that's very Star Wars of you. But yeah, D-WIZZLE, that bounty hunter that dies for like 5 seconds that I thought was cool design, kind of weird but cool chase sequence. Definitely didn't need to be there. Liked it though. Definitely appreciated it for the weirdness that was. Yeah. And then only for that to wrap up in nowhere because oh my god, my fucking millipedes didn't kill you. Shit.
Oh, got a blast.
You couldn't sense that happening.
Fucking god.
Oh god.
Oh, my little bugs didn't do anything. Got a blast.
Got a blast.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that happens, and then it's like again the chain of deals. We gotta go up to Jango Fett. And then Jango's like, oh shit, now I gotta deal with these fucking Jedi. Tries to deal with Padme in the arena, gets fucking decapitated, because yet another cool dude in armor that people like for 5 seconds just to get yeeted. But at least this one kind of went respectably.
I mean, I guess if you want to compare it to Boba's death, it's slightly...
At least Jango actually does a few things in this movie. He actually kicks ass.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, listen, the son definitely lives up to the father's name in terms of dying a complete and utterly disappointing death. And then Phasma would later continue the family name.
Yep.
I mean, God, I think Phasma to me is the most painful actually, because Jango and Boba, as much as they suck, Jango got some scenes. He gets kind of some digs in, and there's a sense of like, who is this elusive assassin?
And I put Phasma over Boba because at least Phasma defended herself. Boba did not.
Boba gets fucking wow. And
Phasma even had more of a character. Like you knew like what her purpose was in her movies.
I mean, listen, Phasma is pretty much just Samus Aran in Star Wars to me. Where I'm like, you have a tall ass lady in a cool ass suit of armor, ominously observing everything in a very cold, emotionless tone.
Except she's a bad guy, so she's Dark Samus.
Yeah, Dark Samus would be a floaty alien that's asexually reproducing.
That's essentially what Phasma is, except Phasma's a human.
Yeah, except the human part. But yeah, Phasma's pretty much Dark Samus in terms of being a very tall, ominous, imposing lady. But and the thing, and also I'm also in the camp that her actress, oh god, I forgot her name.
Gwendolyn Christie.
Thank you. Gwendolyn Christie needs to play Samus because of her fucking height.
Better get a move on it because she's not a spring chicken.
Yeah, I'm definitely listen. Samus can be old. Fuck it. I'll accept that, Samus.
Which is why I say Kate Blanchett, but I mean, Or actually, no. I said no. I said Kate Blanchett for Zelda. My bad. I said Kate Blanchett for Zelda.
Yeah. You said Kate Blanchett for Asajj Ventress.
Yes. Thank you. We'll get to that later. We will get to that later.
Okay, but back to Star Wars. Back to the.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much all wrapped up on Attack of the Clones. Do we have any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, my closing thoughts on Attack of the Clones is just, it's at the bottom of my list because it was the most boring, miserable one, and it's the most robotic feeling, and I believe this is the origin of the infamous meme, I hate sand. Of course, it gets anyway.
This is, like, other than another movie we'll get to in a minute, it's one of the most frustrating Star Wars experiences because there are so many great ideas.
I wonder what your frustrating Star Wars
we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. So
but as I said, it's the most frustrating. It's very frustrating because it has really good ideas, but the execution is just all over the place.
Right.
So, well, I gotta respect it because you know what this film does have.
Yeah.
The other film that I'm thinking about right now doesn't have. It feels like Star Wars. Right. Smiling happily. This feels like Star Wars.
That's why. Is it bad that I know what Beefaloh is talking about because I saw his list?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you better be sorry. Anyway, moving up the list. Going into number 10, we actually kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Well, we talked about a lot of movies earlier, but The Phantom Menace is actually next with racking up 31 points in total.
Phantom Menace makes sense.
Yeah, this is a film that kind of set the foundation of, Star Wars is not the perfect franchise. Like, we originally were left off with just the original 3 movies being displayed as these, masterpiece movies that pretty much centralized and changed the way we see movies today. But by the time The Phantom Menace was announced, the hype surrounding this movie could not have been any bigger, except for maybe The Force Awakens. There might have been a competition. But by the time the movie came out, it ended up being a major disappointment because a lot of people didn't really expect to see a lot of Jar Jar Binks stepping in shit, and just Jar Jar Binks here, Jar Jar Binks there, and just a lot of CGI, bad CGI just all around, and just the story as a whole just doesn't really work all that well, and it just doesn't really feel Star Wars.
Let's I'm gonna tear into this. Also, I acknowledge Telekin13 in the chat with sleazebag selling them death sticks. Thank you, my man.
Telekin's in the chat? I'm not seeing chat right now. I'm sorry. Sleazebag selling the death. Oh. I know what he was doing. That was a great Obi-Wan sequence, by the way. That was an amazing Obi-Wan display.
I loved it so much.
But anyway, yeah. Any thoughts on Phantom Menace? I know that Beefaloh has this at number 10, so it's not dead last for him. But me and D-WIZZLE actually have this a little bit higher. We have it at number 8, so it's not we're not seeing it as an amazing movie. We understand that there are some faults to this movie, but there are some moments to enjoy from it.
Yeah, so this is going to make a lot of people mad. This is the first Star Wars movie I've ever seen, so this movie will always hold a special place in my heart. But that being said...
No one can get mad at you for that.
Yeah, but that being said, the pacing in this movie is really slow in the first half of the movie, maybe even first 3/4 of the film. And then the movie doesn't know what characters they want to focus on. There isn't a main character necessarily.
Yeah, there's no main character.
Narrow it down. Yeah, you can narrow it down to Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Padme, and Anakin, but you don't really feel like there's a central focus in this movie.
This film.
Yeah. But they're and then there's some racial stereotypes with some characters like Viceroy and stuff like that to just made the threat of the movie less imposing, because you have Darth Maul and Darth Sidious on one corner who's really, really interesting, but then you cut to these ridiculous aliens over here with these stupid accents, and I'm like, are these people on the same team? Why am I supposed to be scared by these people?
Does that accent even exist? What are they even saying?
He's trying to be Japanese and something else at the same time. I'm like, what?
Right.
So, but at the same time, this movie does have some really nice childlike wonder with this film. I think there's some really exciting scenes, like the pod race we talk about numerous times.
The most underrated scene in all of Star Wars, by the way, but keep going.
Absolutely. I got a kick out of that, and of course everyone wants to talk about the duel with Darth Maul, which was great. And I actually don't hate Jar Jar Binks. He's a bad character. He's a bad character, but he doesn't ruin the film for me.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily... even the stuff with him on Tatooine, it doesn't really, necessarily take me out of the movie. It's just, they're telling us, this is what Jar Jar is, and this is how he reacts when he's in different environments. So it's just yeah, those don't really work, but it's by the time we're off Tatooine with Jar Jar, he only goes up from there. So...
Yeah.
But yeah, also the pottery sequence, like I said before, is the most underrated sequence in all of Star Wars. It's fast, it's exhilarating. It doesn't speed up to the point where it's okay, we need to get more information out of this. Nor does it ever slow down for us to feel okay, we didn't really we're taking too much time with this. No, it actually takes a good solid maybe 10 or so minutes just to get through the entire race, and you didn't even give a fuck. You did not care that you would sit through those 10 minutes. Even if you sat through it for maybe 5 extra minutes just for looking at what they could do with the CGI in that scene, you did not care. You did not give a single flying fuck that you would ever have to sit through that sequence, because it was astounding to look at, and it was probably one of the most natural sequences to watch in all of Star Wars for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there is stuff I can nitpick with the camera angles. So I'm not going to get into that right now. But just
some of the shots do still look like they were kind of recycled a lot. But other than that, it was a really fun sequence, to say the least.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually like Jake Lloyd as Anakin. I think I
don't mind Jake Lloyd. What's the hate for Jake Lloyd all about?
Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily his acting. I think it's the dialogue that he was given. That's why people think he's awful. And also, child actors in general, they're just now starting to get better. But
yeah, because this movie came out in 1999, so essentially you're not going to get amazing child actors at that point. But yeah, over time, they
hold on. Did we lose Beef? Did we lose Beef?
Beef, we there?
Beef? Yeah, I noticed because he didn't say anything.
Oh, I can't.
Oh, he's saying on the chat, can you hear him? No, yeah, we can't hear you, Beef.
No, I can't hear anything from Beef.
I was wondering why he was so quiet.
Oh, I don't know.
Hopefully he'll come back.
Yeah, he just left call. There he is.
Hello?
Yeah, there he is. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got disconnected for a moment, and then I got put into the mute dimension, apparently. All right. I was trying to say, let me get a word in here real quick. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, now, I'm 23 years old, just to clarify. So, this film, I was 3 years old when this film, around 3 years old when this film came out. And I was apparently taking this film as a baby and cried through the whole film. Now, as an adult, going back and watching this, I saw it again, and I bought a little Phantom Menace action figure set because I liked that Anakin was a child and I was a child. So I identified with this fellow childlike character. Now, I'm going to say with this film, this movie definitely suffered to me a lot with just, again, you mentioned the unfocused nature of this film. This film feels like a fever dream. It feels a lot like we need to introduce the politics and the backstory. It's kind of like this film wanted to just... This film to me feels like reading the lore descriptions of every item in Dark Souls, where I'm like just getting hit by like a buffet of information. Like, this movie is a buffet of just, wow, none of these items look good, but like, damn, that is a lot of stuff going on here, where we've got Anakin in the pod race. We've got Jedi Knights trying to protect Anakin. We've got Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's relationship being established. We got a romance being started with the eerily not in the same age range, and that age gap is insurmountable, Padme and Anakin.
Why couldn't they be the same age?
Well, aren't they canonically supposed to be around the same age, but they just did not, they wanted to cast Natalie Portman, so they brought in Natalie Portman, and Jake Lloyd was just fucked.
Well, like, couldn't they get somebody the same age as Natalie Portman? Like, since there's already a 10-year gap.
I would rather exchange Jake Lloyd instead of Natalie Portman, because Natalie Portman is a goddess.
Well, Natalie...
Don't even disagree. She is a goddess.
Is she a goddess? Yes. Is your goddess in this film stiff as a fucking board, though? Because Natalie in this film...
Then again, that does boil down to the horrible dialogue that she was given. The writing was not good. Yeah. Her acting was fine. Like, it was suitable for the character. The dialogue was not good.
I feel like...
This is award-winning Natalie Portman. Award-winning actress. She's all right in a Star Wars movie.
I'm pretty sure also award-winning Liam Neeson.
A bad actor, but okay, no one would say she's a bad actor, but she's terribly underutilized in this film, and it comes through in it permeates the writing and it permeates in the directing. Where I'm like, you can't. As an actor, as somebody who again, it has to be like I'm an actor. I'm not really that type of actor, but knowing intentions, knowing lines, knowing how to like physically present yourself. I could not redeem most of these lines. So, for Natalie to stand around and talk to Kid Annie and try to build up a little romantic friendship with the actor that's clearly, like, way younger than her is awkward. I could not make that work.
Yeah, it was... I mean, they did the best with what they were given, but it just felt...
But you're given just fucking scraps, dude.
Yeah, I know. But it's like, for me, even though the dialogue was bad, I still... felt their friendship somewhat.
I didn't even buy that.
You didn't?
I bought that they were friends. Like, it took a little bit of time, like on Tatooine, just to get themselves used to each other. But by the time we were off of it, like you could tell that they really cared for each other.
I mean, I feel like the Are You an Angel bit was probably the most like bizarre.
Yeah, that was stupid.
It was bizarre, but I definitely could feel what they're going for. Where it's like, because it was funny because in the way when I was a kid, I didn't think they were gonna make a romance happen. So I thought it was gonna be. So my brain as a child, when I first saw this film, was a teenage girl who was annoyed at this younger brother figure. But because as a kid, no one explained to me that like this is what a romantic beat is. This is what we should be expecting in the next film. Yeah, kid bothering her, but like the little kid has a crush on her because, like, of course, children will develop like little crushes on older people when like they're just confused children. Like that happens sometimes. Where it's like a duckling.
Yeah.
So I organically bought that and mentally filled in the blanks and did that work. But then as an adult, I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, this is some awkward dialogue.
Yeah.
I know some of the most eerie children, and I say this humorously. I know children that when I interact with them, it's definitely a Children of the Corn energy that I get from them, and they say things that are concerningly adult-like. Where I'm like, what have you been through, small child? And they'll explain to me, like, they'll basically talk to me in Nietzschean code, where I'm like, are you describing nihilism?
And it'll blow you up. Boom!
Yeah. So, like, me crouches down to a child. Hey, how's it going? The world's going to end. You foolish adult. You don't see the pain coming. The day of reckoning's upon us. I talk to kids that say alarming things of that nature as like a joke, and I get that they're trying to make me laugh, but then I kind of go, that's a little worrisome. This film, even in that ballpark of somebody who is interacted with troublingly unchildlike children, I still could not buy that dialogue of, are you an angel? Like, I just don't know. I interact with a lot of kids, like, because again, I'm at the point where a lot of my friends are having kids. Yeah. They're just out here producing babies.
Right. If we really just step back a bit and we compare Jake Lloyd to other child actors who are terrible, he's not really that bad compared to other people.
Let's think about bad child actors then. If we want to do the Jake Lloyd comparison thing, because Jake Lloyd isn't. It's true. He's not exceptionally bad. Mark Hamill. I saw a clip of him today talking about like the savagery of the Star Wars fan base, which big truth.
First of all, the two that come to my mind instantly were those kids in the live-action Dumbo movie. Oh my god!
I did not watch that tragedy.
I never watched it either.
Yeah, don't waste your time. But like those kids were acting like robots. So. Yeah, I have a soft spot for Tim Burton, but like that just those kids were acting like robots, especially the girl. Jesus Christ, her inflection was like this the entire time. And I want to invent things instead of putting in a circus.
I love you, Father. You are amazing, and I will cherish your gift immensely. Thank you.
I'm like, what? Are you a human being? Like, what is going on?
Is this supposed to be Jane Banks from Mary Poppins?
And speaking of, that's Natalie Portman's delivery when she's disguising herself as Queen Amidala. Oh my god, that was horrible. Viceroy, you will not stop me. I will not sign the peace treaty. You will not take my plan.
I mean, a part of me wants to think that the joke is that it's a bad double. Like, it's a bad actress. It's a double.
It's Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley.
It's Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley. Both of them are A-list actresses.
Which, man, I never noticed a resemblance between them until the film maybe drew attention to that. I was like, huh. Also, poor Keira Knightley. Imagine getting cast as Amidala's double.
Jesus. I mean, at first you'd be like, yeah, it's a Star Wars movie. Of course I'd do it. But then you actually see the script and shit. I'm like, oh.
I would have left the set day one. I wouldn't even care if it was a Sar Wars movie. I would have left the set day one. If that's what they were wanting to do.
I'm not going to lie to y'all. I'll be honest. When it comes to Star Wars, there's a lot I would do for the series. So I could see myself being like, fucking fine, I'll play your bland-ass paper towel double. I'll do it.
I'll be the double to Jar Jar Binks, whatever it takes.
I'll be a.
No, I know. Okay, hold on. I'm not insane.
I'll be a fucking porg. I don't care.
Okay, come on, man. Whatever.
Oh my god.
I like the porgs. I like the porgs.
Did nothing wrong. A video essay by me.
Right.
But
Keira definitely recovered. He went to Pirates of the Caribbean, so she was fine.
Oh yeah, she made out like a bandit. And isn't she in Kingdom Hearts 3, or isn't her likeness used in that game?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, I actually just poured myself a drink for this evening because I'm enjoying this. I'm gonna enjoy this conversation quite a bit.
All right.
Damn it! You fuck!
Do we have any final thoughts on Phantom Menace before we continue on?
I guess. Okay, let's close me out real quick because I didn't get to say this earlier. The pod race scene is great. I made the joke. I like F-Zero, so of course I like the pod race scene. I admit there's some real peril there. There's a sense of, I know that Anakin can't die because he's Darth Vader, but there's a sense of fear and dread for this little child where I'm like, are they gonna fucking like cripple him? Like, is the Boba?
Yeah. Imagine what it would have been like if he actually lost that race. Like Star Wars would not have even existed.
I mean, I think too it's interesting that you establish that he's a technical genius. Where like, oh, he can fly this fucking thing. He built it himself. This is the beginning of a lot of character traits that Skywalkers would have. And I was like, in a way, it's not organic for sure. It's definitely jarring. But it feels believable because you know people that are exceptional at early ages. They have affinities for things. The pod race scene's great for that reason, where I'm like, there are some kids that were just born to do something, and Anakin feels like a chosen one in that regard. And I feel like this film... also, okay, real quick too, on the Gungans, because I mentioned earlier, the Gungans layer being cool. Now, when I said that was cool, I mean that it was cool in a concept art way, not that it was like, amazing. I was like, this visually looks like
really, I actually think it was really creative. I mean, we can say about the Gungans themselves, but I think it's a really interesting, landscape.
It reminds me of a Sonic the Hedgehog zone, where I'm like, Gungan Palace Zone, Act 1, where they swim with these rebreathers, which that's also improbable, but swimming around with rebreathers. And then they have this comical scene dealing with the Gungan leader. Like, it was definitely, like, not unnecessary, but I did appreciate the idea. Now, I would have liked if they had done this in a way better film, where, like, the Gungan are the natives of the planet. They'll help us out. But, like, they did that, but they played that angle for all it was worth. Where it's like, no, Gungans are like the travel species. They're really good at getting everywhere.
Yeah.
Justifies us going to like needing them everywhere we went. They're good at talking to Greedo, the poor anti-Semitic stereotype.
Yeah. And
we got Jar Jar. Oh, yeah. By the way, speaking of Jar Jar, I love that Jar Jar would later come on to emulate. Jar Jar's successor would ultimately be Rose in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, come on, man.
I will elaborate my thoughts on Rose and stuff like that later. I'm excited to because I think that Rose, unlike Jar Jar, is definitely unfairly Jar Jarred, but she got Jar Jarred. Where in the first film they introduced her, the fan base had a negative reaction, and then they went, "Hey, yo, hold up," and then turned her into a background character that appears for 2 scenes.
Oh yeah.
Rose got hit by that bus.
Yeah. Duel of the Fates is one of the best Star Wars scores of all time.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely.
It got reused for a Rise of Skywalker ad. What is there not to love about that score?
Yeah. It got merged. The thing is that whole medley is a medley of that and Imperial March, which I think is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
All right, but next film. Move on.
Yeah, that's our talk on The Phantom Menace. The next film, going to be one of our newer films. The first Disney film we're going to be talking about, and I don't know I don't know if this is going to hurt D-WIZZLE or not, but it's going to be Solo: A Star Wars Story, sitting at 37 points in total.
Wait, what is it?
It's Solo, a Star Wars story. Now,
I can see why it's low. But...
Now, originally, there have been reports saying that, like, even before, like, months before the movie came out, that people in their first reactions were saying that this movie is just not going to do well and it's not good. So, when I read that, my initial thought was, yeah, I kind of didn't even think it was going to be good in the first place. But after seeing it, it's like, it surprised me, but that doesn't necessarily make it all that great, all that good. Like, the pacing for this movie, I didn't even know what was going on in the first half an hour of the movie. It felt like we were just jumping into character exposition with Han having to leave someone behind just to leave the planet. And then, I think it was like a 3-year time jump in the movie. Was that what it was? 3 years?
Yeah.
It was a 3-year time jump, and then we're meeting back with that same character again, except expecting that there's going to be like that same kind of relationship, when really there wasn't, which, I can accept that. But it just felt like by the time we did, like, the movie started picking up by the time I saw Lando. Everything else before that, I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't even know what their flavor was. So it just felt like a movie that was... Like, it had a good concept, but it figured out what it wanted to be during, like, the middle act of the movie, instead of just trying to establish what it was trying to be at the beginning.
Okay, so here's the deal with me. If you guys have been following my YouTube channel, the D-WIZZLE podcast, talked about all the Star Wars movies, and I talked about this one specifically. Keep in mind, when this movie was announced, I was 100% against this being made, because there was no need for us to have a Han Solo spin-off film. I thought he could be utilized better in a bounty hunter movie with Boba Fett and develop the relationship there, but they didn't decide to do that. So I was immediately against this film from the get-go. And then when I saw the marketing for it in the trailers, it looked horrible, and I was detesting seeing this movie. This is probably the first Star Wars movie ever where I saw a trailer and I was like, I don't want to see this film at all. And I was dragging myself to watch it. And when I walked out of watching this, I was utterly surprised about how much I enjoyed this film. I know I am in the minority on this. Whenever I bring up Solo to people, they're like, really? You like that movie? Blah, blah, blah. I am not saying that this movie doesn't have problems. It does have some narrative issues, and the end does not make sense to me. But, like, I just overall thought it was a solid adventure movie. If I just look at it as that, like, I think it's a solid adventure film. And I thought Alden Ehrenreich as Solo did a decent job. He's not, like, borderline perfect like Ian McGregor as Obi-Wan, but I did see some of the mannerisms that he was trying to do that Harrison Ford did. He was putting in effort.
And even like Donald Glover did his homework on Lando Calrissian. He even went to Billy D. Williams to search for like to ask him for guidance. Like, what do I need to do to play Lando? And Billy D. Williams actually, gave Donald everything he needed to know.
Donald Glover talking to Billy D. Williams about how to be cool is so funny, because Donald Glover is the epitome of cool in the contemporary eye. So it's this weird thing where I'm like, how does new cool become the old cool? And I feel like Donald Glover definitely nails that for me. Han, though, where I'm like, I feel like the new guy for Han tries to have his mannerisms down, but I definitely feel like, of course, it's impossible to replicate the smoothness of Harrison Ford. It's just hard to do without being a top-tier Hollywood actor, which... For this film, which I do applaud the new trilogy, or the new Star Wars films for doing, is digging up a lot of new talent in terms of actors that aren't quite like established. They're somewhere in between. They got someone who was as handsome as Harrison Ford and definitely has a young type of edge look, but you cannot replicate that charisma. No. And that's what it hurt the most, is that I feel like Donald Glover as Lando did such a good job trying to replicate that with Harrison Ford, I was like, oh, I don't see that same effort.
And
I
that's
feel
one
like
of the reasons why I was against it. Even though I did end up liking this movie, that was one of the biggest worries I had with it.
This film really is
Ford is such a unique actor, and it's like no one could emulate what he brings to a performance. That's why I don't want anyone playing Indiana Jones either.
This film, like the Clone Wars movie, is in the vague dimension where I'm like, it's a film that's a haze. This is an acceptable haze, but it's a haze.
Yeah, this doesn't really leave an impact on anything.
It doesn't. Again, this thing that sets up like the golden dice and stuff like that was all going to be used for later. So it's clear that this film was. The thing is that I feel like this film shouldn't really exist. Like, we didn't need his elaboration on backstory, but they wanted to have moments later on be critical and crucial and feel valuable and earned and weightful. Especially after I just gotten.
And then you drop a huge bombshell of, Darth Maul it was behind this the entire time, but you got to see the next movie to see him do anything. I'm like, God.
No. Didn't they cancel that? Like, isn't there not another? Like, they're doing series now on Disney Plus, but
make a solo series happen.
I don't want. Listen, General Grievous series first, then you get your solo series. Damn it.
General Grievous series.
I'm just saying. I'm a stan for General Grievous.
No, I'm with you, dog. I'm with you, dog. Ever since the miniseries, I'm like, they did not do justice to Grievous. Well, they kind of did in the Clone Wars, but it wasn't the same.
Listen, I was just like, the novelty of a fucking biological creature in a droid thing wielding 4 lightsabers is the coolest goddamn premise that we never elaborated on. Just, I'm gonna helicopter hands at you, Obi-Wan. And I was like, holy shit, that's terrifying!
Chop in 15 seconds.
Sorry, listen, we'll get to the hype train known as Revenge of the Sith later.
Picking up from talking about the Darth Maul sequence at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Once I saw Darth Maul, I immediately I'm one of those people that just kind of immediately tuned out of the movie because I immediately thought
Sam Witwer?
that was Sam Witwer that voiced Darth Maul.
That was Starkiller in
Starkiller and Deacon
Force
from Days Gone.
Yeah.
But by the time I saw that sequence, I immediately felt like I wanted to tune out because I felt like at that point, okay, yeah, you're trying to appeal to the TV shows a little too much at that point, to the point where you're going to put them in movies. And it's not only that, but instead of having Darth Maul come into play, I'm going to bring up what D-WIZZLE said earlier. Why couldn't we get Cate Blanchett for Asajj Ventress?
Yeah.
Why couldn't we get that?
Yeah. Also, considering the fact that in the Clone Wars, she has more of a tie to bounty hunting than Darth Maul does, technically.
Yeah. And I mean, with Darth Maul, too, it feels like they were trying to cash in on the same rage that overtook, at the end of Rogue One, the scene I'm referring to, which we'll get to later. They wanted that money shot, where they were like, we want this critical scene that will define this film, where it basically sells people that this film is justified in its existence.
Which, yes, but at the same time, Darth Maul narratively has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Rogue One beautifully did.
Say, initially, it would have been much more of a gut puncher if it was Asajj Ventress, because we never really got to see a live-action Asajj Ventress. We only got to see her in cartoons. We saw her in the original Clone Wars miniseries, and we saw her in the Clone Wars. But with Darth Maul, we've seen him in the Phantom Menace before, and he's already been brought back in many other projects in the future, like the Clone Wars and Rebels. So it's like, what's the point of bringing him in solo? Like, other than, appealing to the fans, which is one thing that I didn't really like about this movie, to be honest.
Even though it's all connected.
Somehow.
But that's another thing that's frustrating now that I'm actually talking with you guys about it and thinking about it. Because, with this Darth Maul reveal, it's like, even if we got a continuation from this, it's not like people really are clamoring for Han to face off against Darth Maul. You know what people want to see?
Nobody is expecting Han to go toe-to-toe with Darth Maul.
I mean, I know some people I would want to see it, but, if you're talking about, like the main going audience. What they really want to see is Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul again, but they can't technically do that because that will go against the continuity of Rebels, so they can't do that. So it's like, what kind of payoff are you going to be doing with Han versus Darth Maul? I'm sure they could think of a lot of things, but it's just like, we'll be sending off the wrong message that, the most exciting or most biggest twist of a Han Solo film is Darth Maul.
Darth fucking Maul.
So
just Darth fucking Maul is your
right.
Darth Maul is in the movie. Go see it.
I like how we're not talking about the other parts of this film. It's just, hey, Darth Maul happened. What this film is.
Yeah.
What this film is Darth Maul happened. That's all I care about.
Yeah. I mean, the train sequence I thought was really.
Yeah.
And I liked the who is that?
Fucking, I don't know.
Yeah, she looks cool too. I liked her, and Emilia Clarke. I liked her until the end. I actually kind of liked the romance they were having with Han up until a point.
I actually didn't. So
I know a lot of people
will kind of get into that right now.
But I will say this: you tell me to my face that it felt less natural than the Leia and Han.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It felt less natural than Leia Han, for sure.
Listen, Dwayne, I don't know who you are, but I already feel a sense of kinship towards you out of this conversation. I'm sorry to tell you this to you.
We've already established that.
I will air one stream. We will get to that when we get to Empire.
Okay, but I expressed all my thoughts of this film pretty much. Where I'm just like, it was average. It exists. Han having a mentor was kind of cool, I guess, but like
Han having a lover in this movie before Leia kind of ruins the continuity of how Han could be attracted to other people.
First of all, the romance with that made no sense from the beginning. And like, Han Solo is a scoundrel. You don't think he would be hooking up with other girls before Leia?
Is there a throwaway line about like Han basically being the absentee dad because he's too busy being a smuggler and adventures with pretty ladies? He's kind of like what we joke, but like him and Lando are the same tier of ladies.
I mean, I'm not saying it's like Lando level, but like I totally buy that Han would have like a fling with someone else before Leia.
Sorry, Lando fucks a robot also. We can talk about Lando fucks a robot.
Once I saw Alden Ehrenreich and Emilia Clarke started kissing on screen, like in the first 3 minutes of the movie or so, I immediately was against it. Because I felt like the continuity of Han Solo, like actually caring about other female companions, was kind of ruined when he ended up kissing Emilia Clarke, because it doesn't, earlier it felt like, Han Solo was just like, yeah, I'm a scoundrel, I don't really care about many people. But then by the time he goes to meet Leia and finds out that she's rich and she has all this power in the world and whatnot, Han kind of tries to implement that to try and get her to love him in Empire, which we will get to a little bit more. But that's why I think the relationship between Han and Leia was more...
Listen, I just say with Leia and Han, it feels artificial, but it makes sense given the circumstances. Leia was like, I'm going for my bro. Oh, wait, that's my bro. No. Oh, shit, no.
Coming from that, but that's not the worst Star Wars character, in my opinion.
Is that the worst?
And you can have your opinion, but Lily, I could not stand her at all. The moment she came on screen, I'm like, oh, this is where we're going now. She's doing women's rights. I mean, robots' rights, and then talking about having sex with a human being.
I mean, listen, we're only a few years in the future where people are trying to fuck robots.
At least she wasn't interested.
A few years.
Oh my god!
At least she wasn't interested.
Robots' rights is definitely the funniest. I was like, oh, what the fuck?
Oh god, I could just feel Kathleen Kennedy's crap all over that character, if you want to call it that. Oh my god!
as your local neighborhood SJW, like, I mean, as somebody who's really, really progressive, but somebody who, like, I'm working on an essay for my own content about, like, analyzing this with the lens of, again, so with the gender studies degree, from a feminist lens, from a critical lens, from a, like, oh man, this is a mess. This just screams, we want to just throw some shit in here. It will appeal to no one, and no one will be happy. That's what this film has. It's like just that energy.
Yeah, I'm fine with stuff being progressive, but it has to feel natural in the context of the story.
We deserve. I would say this as somebody who's part of marginalized groups or part of the community. We deserve better stories than garbage. Yeah, we deserve better stories than this.
Right, like I'm watching this, and this is what I'm thinking in the back of my mind. You guys deserve better representation than this. That's what makes me pissed off about this stuff. Is like this doesn't serve anything in the story except for you stopping the movie and telling us what we should feel about society. Blah 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 blah. And it's like, and you're doing this with a fucking droid.
But listen, we'll get to my fucking big beef again. I hope. The film I want to tear into is coming up soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
All right.
Moving up the list after wrapping up Solo, coming in at number 8, another relatively newer movie to us, but I'm not sure how many people are going to react to this. But it's
what is it?
What?
What's the entry?
It's going to be The Rise of Skywalker.
No!
Coming in at 45 points in total. Keep in mind, these next 3 films, by the way, 8, 7, and 6, their points were rather close with each other. They were very close. But Rise of Skywalker ended up being at the lowest of the 3 with 45 points.
Yeah, what is it on Rotten Tomatoes right now?
On Rotten Tomatoes, Rotten Tomatoes. 60? Rotten Tomatoes is not liking this movie. It currently has, oh my god, Rise of Skywalker currently, as of right now, it has 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. But the audience score, it has a 52% on the tomato meter.
They don't like anime. That's all I'm going to say. They don't like anime.
But the audience score is actually at an 86%. So the audiences are liking it.
Yeah.
I'll angel anybody if you're talking about anime.
Okay, let's talk Rise of Skywalker, because I'm going to crack my knuckles real quick for this one. And I'm going to be the defender. I enjoyed the shit out of this movie. Now, I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying it's definitely a bad film.
I enjoyed the shit out of this movie. I'm not saying it's good.
I love the shit out of this film.
I love this movie. I'm not saying it's good.
Listen. This writing definitely exudes great anime energy, where it doesn't explain anything. It's just, hey, the dead speak. Palpatine's back. Have some Star Destroyers. And guess what? You made Snoke disposable. Here's a bunch of Snokes in a fucking tube. I fell in love with this film immediately because I was like, oh my god, there's energy here. There's life. It feels alive. There's a pulse. I put this in. Let me check my listing again.
You put this at number 5 on your list, and so did D-WIZZLE, actually. I actually put this at number 6, just a little bit outside of top 5 for me, because this movie... I
put it in my top 5 because the thing is, I know that this isn't a good film. Like, writing-wise, this is a fucking atrocious abomination. Like, this is an affront to God in terms of writing, where I'm like, you literally sped ran your first act. You were like, I'm going to do an any percent run, and then proceeded to just whiz by any exposition. You explained nothing.
So fast.
Yeah, they pretty much spent through like the whole movie they basically rushed the movie trying to get to the final battle, which is pretty much the essential opposite of what Avengers Endgame tried to do, where they tried to take more time exploiting characters and establishing worlds and view places.
This movie can be summed up perfectly in one scene. Rey, when confronted with exploring the Death Star, is like, the waves are too much. I can't get to the Death Star. By the way, Ruby, you sold me the ticket to this film. Thank you for selling me a ticket to a goddamn roller coaster.
You're welcome, I guess.
Yeah,
I still don't remember that, but you're welcome.
I didn't say anything to you because I was like, I don't know if you recognize me in person because I don't think we've met. We haven't met in person before, but I was I was like, I know who this person is. Thank you.
Right.
This is a sign. This is a sign.
But no. Sit down, watch this film. God, this is amazing. Where I was trying to say earlier, my example. Rey, you're confronted with a bunch of roaring waves that are crashing and coming down, and it's like the waves are too rough. You can't get to the Death Star. Rey goes, "No, we need to go today," and climbs on the fucking skitter and goes across to the ship. She keeps the movie's plot going, and that's what this movie is Rey being like, this has to happen, and then running. This film has so much energy in it, and that's what I love about this film, is that there's a lot of character, there's a lot of intentional choices to take ideas The Last Jedi had that I think were good and salvageable, and really sweeten them. It really extrapolates on a lot of the stuff that I thought The Last Jedi could have in a constructive way. Well, I was like, wow, I like what this film did. Even though Leia's an NPC who speaks in the weirdest way because they used scrap lines and had somebody try to replicate her, which is weird. This film is very weird.
Yeah.
But I think what makes me adore this film so much is that it felt like Star Wars, where I was like, we got Poe, Finn, and Rey, a trio that was marketed and hyped up to be like the trio, finally together. And guess what? They had decent chemistry. We had a great scene where, in the most Force Awakens moment of this film, Rey kills what we think kills Chewbacca with the Force lightning. And I was like, that moment gave me genuine peril because it feels organic, where it's like she'd get frustrated fighting with Kylo. Of course that would happen.
Yes, showing some imperfections with Rey, which was what I've been waiting for this entire time.
I was like, yes! This is what I needed! I hate The Last Jedi a lot, that's no secret. This film was kind of like an adrenaline shot for me, where after The Last Jedi, and I was like, I'm dreading seeing this film, because all the critics I like hated this film. They hated it. So I was like, oh shit. It was kind of like getting like, oh, by the way, you know how you didn't like that last film? Here's a repair. And I was like, whoa, I actually really appreciate this. Some of those things in the last film were definitely good, and I appreciate this film is, I mean, to quote one of the reviewers I listened to a while ago, this is a hackish film. A terribly hackish film. This feels like fan fiction in a lot of ways. But it feels satisfying in a lot of ways. And that's what I think, to me, resonates most deeply. The energy this film has, in terms of just the story has to keep moving. Every planet looks really visually exciting. That's what I think makes this film so enjoyable to me. And that's why I feel like an ardent defender of this film.
Yeah, a lot of people are probably going to defend this film because of how exhilarating and exciting that this movie is. I'm kind of a little bit... I don't want to say I'm on the opposite end of what everyone else is saying about like when they talk about like this film retcons a lot of stuff from The Last Jedi, but for me, I don't really see this movie like retconning a lot of stuff from Last Jedi. Like when Luke appears on screen for the first time, when he catches the lightsaber and he has his first line of saying like, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect or whatever. A lot of people took that as like that's an immediate retcon of how he was portrayed in The Last Jedi. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that because in The Last Jedi, Luke was a character who was conflicted with his emotions and he doubted himself a lot. But at the end of the film, he actually came to his senses, having to risk his life saving the Resistance and buying them time just to stall the First Order, and actually passing away from that. So that was more of like The Last Jedi was more of a character growth for Luke, and then The Rise of Skywalker is more of a
completion of the arc, where
it's more of completing the arc of Luke Skywalker and just the name of Skywalkers in general. I
that moment too, where he just is like, "This is pretty important. You might not want to throw this one away." Although I do think he looked kind of schlubby, raising his X-wing out of the
that's
ground.
another thing. A lot of people are not talking about this. I don't know why, but I'm not a huge fan of the wig that he has in the movie. I don't know how people are not noticing that.
I actually did notice that. We did talk about that in the podcast. Like, that didn't bother me. Like, I knew it was probably a reshoot, but like
that was an obvious reshoot. Like the wig that they used in some of the scenes compared to the hairstyle that he used, they brought back the hairstyle that he had in The Last Jedi, and they also had scenes of him where it looked like he was wearing a wig. You could immediately tell that those were reshoots.
I mean, I just like the style of his hair. I mean, I get it.
What?
I did, and it's like for me, it's like because like. For me, aesthetically, this is someone who knows about some costume designs and stuff like that. So going from The Last Jedi, where his hair was like really more rugged and stuff like that, I saw, his hair being, because it looked like it more combed down and stuff like that. That's just me seeing that, he's more reinvigorated and stuff like that. He's like more fresh than he was in The Last Jedi, aesthetic wise. So that's why it didn't really bother me necessarily. I just personally liked his hair more than it was in Last Jedi because it was like. I mean, that's what it was going for with, how it's supposed to look. He's supposed to be more rugged and dirty and whatever, which is fine. But it's like, I just thought, his hair being more, combed out or whatever in Rise of Skywalker, it fit aesthetically and totally with, him being Force Ghost.
I was going to say, yeah, and I agree with that, but I'd rather have my Luke Skywalker not look so much like a punk rock star a lot of the time.
When you become a Force Ghost, do you get to pick how you, come back? Like, do you get to put on the outfit and then come back into the world as like your primest self?
I mean, you can pretty much just Force Ghost yourself just as pretty much anything, really.
I mean, I see, if I was a Force Ghost, I'd be putting on like a dumbass clown suit and being like, honk, honk, it's your past.
Oh my god.
Mr. Jar Jar Binks over here.
Listen, everyone's got to play the role sometime. But no, I think that with Luke in particular, like, seeing him visually, again, as schlubby and weird as he looked, summoning the X-Wing as, like, it was still very refreshing and cool to see him come back, because I actually loved the story in The Last Jedi with Luke. In fact, a lot of the issues I take with The Last Jedi were averted by, it's simply, like, I just loved the arc with Luke so much.
Yeah,
that film
the payoff
was so great, and this payoff felt so satisfying, and I was like, good.
Yeah.
And the other things this film does.
He loves the story arc of Luke in The Last Jedi. I am not alone. Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't say I didn't say I disliked Luke's stuff in completely. Like, there was some stuff here and here. No.
I'm just kidding.
I said that I actually liked seeing Luke grumpy and ruggedy. There was just a couple of story choices here and there that I did not like. But I did like to see Luke having a struggle. I didn't want him to be perfect like he was in Return of the Jedi. There wouldn't be a story there. So it's like, I don't have a problem with him, losing his way. But there's just certain stuff here and there that I was just like, it just didn't feel right or consistent, which we will get to with there. But it's like,
he didn't like the green milk.
I can't fucking wait to get to The Last Jedi, because that's really. I'm looking forward to us meeting on that battlefield as Duel of Fates plays as we have the discussion. But until we get to that point.
Yeah, but anyway, I didn't say much about it. So this movie, it's like I pretty much emulate what Beef was saying mostly. It's that this doesn't feel like a film. This feels like a 2-hour theme park ride from Disney World and calling it Star Wars.
That's delightful. Delightful.
That Galaxy's Edge ride, it literally felt like a 2-hour experience of that.
Welcome to the Star Wars Wild Ride. I'm your host, Kathleen Kennedy. Beep, beep, here we go. J.J. Abrams is the conductor of this train, and we're going now.
Exactly. So this movie, like, in general, I enjoy it. I don't love it, but I do enjoy it. And it's just this movie this whole time just made me think in the back of my mind how much better this trilogy as a whole would have been if they had a plan from the beginning. Because this movie is literally telling me that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson were not on the same page, and so it's literally
even the prequels.
It's so weird because J.J. produced The Last Jedi, though.
Right, but it just tonal wise, like, structure wise, it just feels like they're just at each other's like at odds with each other. You know, it almost feels like JJ was shoehorning in his concept for Episode 8 in the first quarter of the movie, and then going.
Yeah, oh my god! It feels like we just jam it. It's not a because The Last Jedi is a film that's very difficult, I think, from a writing level to continue from story-wise, because that film has a lot of resolute endings, and it feels like the ending of a trilogy, if anything. Yeah. At least that particular film. I can imagine the struggle of how the fuck do we do an Episode 8 now? And meanwhile, I see The Last Jedi has a roadmap. I definitely see what they could have done, and I really do wonder what it would have looked like if Rian Johnson got to close a trilogy out, so that way we can, even though he didn't start the ideas off, we could see him bookend it, where like, okay, it ends with Rian Johnson's vision.
Or at the very least have JJ look over the entire trilogy, you know.
And then better
at least help out with the
kind of find ways to organically weave together the ideas that they're presented with. This film has some organic moments, though. Like, I do love the callbacks to The Last Jedi this film does with like the Holdo maneuver line. I think though the most painful part of this film is Rose, because I actually really liked Rose's the idea of not Rose's character execution, but the idea of Rose's character, this little plucky rebel who is like, you're trying to escape from my ship, and stuns Finn for being a deserter because she's tired of people leaving. I love what they could do with that character, and this film pretty much goes, yeah, Leia said I can't really go anywhere. Like, yeah, I'm not going to go. And then Finn gives her the shoulder tap because we're just friends.
Yeah.
And that was painful because I was like, I really wish this film more cooperated with The Last Jedi rather than rejected it so harshly. Right. But then the ideas it took.
But like, it's like you feel like JJ, as you said, he took ideas that Rian Johnson did and made it more interesting and expanded on it. I don't.
My God, the fucking force, like I don't know what the name of the technique is, but like the force projection or astral projection,
the force sky call or whatever.
Force DMs. Force DMs is what I've heard them called. It's a force DMs.
Okay.
But the force DMs thing, where it's like you are in two places at once having this conversation, that turning into a fight again feels very anime, where it's a power that logically could end up there because you're teleporting things. But there was a really great moment where at the beginning, they're having Rey and Kylo are projecting to each other, and then Kylo snatches the beads off of Rey's neck and goes, scan this and figure out where they are. I went, holy shit, that's insane. That broke my brain for a moment, and I was like, oh my god, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Also, shouldn't that have killed Kylo? But I get why Luke died. But like, my brain went, shouldn't that projection have killed Kylo on its own? But ignoring that logic for a moment, I think that was a beautiful like way to extrapolate on that idea. Where, holy shit, you just turned this, like, little, like, just having conversations into an active plot piece to move the plot forward. Where, suddenly, Kylo can chase you because he'll pick up a little bit of dust on your shoulder or take a necklace off your neck and go, figure out where they are. Also, I liked that the celebration that happens every 42 years is because it's Star Wars' 42nd anniversary. I like that detail.
I immediately caught up on that after 3PO. So, and it's funny that 3PO out of all characters was the one that said it, because he's the only, not only the only one of the only characters, but the only actor of that cast that went through all of those films ever since A New Hope.
Yeah. So it was kind of neat. Every 42 years, and I was like, "Aw, that's cute." Because I was like, "Why is it a peculiar number?" And then I was like, "Oh, 42 years of Star Wars."
I was gonna say like 42 years. That was cute. That was cute.
I mean, Initially I went, is that a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference? And then
I never saw that movie, so I wouldn't know.
I read the book and the film. Yeah, I thought it was reference to that initially, where it's the meme of 42. But no, then no, it was 42 years of Star Wars. I was like, that's a fun coincidence for science fiction fans.
What do you think about Palpatine?
Okay, let's talk about fucking gross ass Palpatine coming from the. I mean, so I came up with a joke fan theory. I want to tell my father this, and if he listens to this podcast, hi Dad. Because my dad's into Star Wars, but one of the things ways of Snoke shoved into the tubes, and it's like a bunch of Snokes, which is a nice way to build off the idea that Snoke is disposable. Like, this is just a literalization of that idea that this character we killed in a scene, in one of the cheesiest scenes of The Last Jedi, in my opinion, is disposable, literally. So we have two Snokes in one tube, which is something that, like, in Castlevania, you'd see two monsters jammed into a tube to show how disposable those creatures are. Like, I immediately got the message. And then Palpatine standing in the dark quoting Episode 3 was pretty rad.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa!
That was really cool.
Some considered to be unnatural. And I was like, wow. I mean, we could have had him saying more lines, but
yeah, there was a lot of questions that I had.
Well, they definitely. The thing about Palpatine is that the film made a very brave choice to just not fucking explain it.
Yeah, just go.
And also put his message in Fortnite of all places.
Fortnite.
Where you have to go play Fortnite to hear the broadcast. And I was like, oh god damn it.
Oh, real? Wait, what?
Yeah, Fortnite had like a special event going on for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, where they got like
Jedi, where you want to hear Palpatine's broadcast.
They got like a hint of what Palpatine was, or whatever, or what the movie was, or whatever.
So yeah.
So that whole thing they said in the crawl with him projecting his voice to the galaxy, you had to play Fortnite to do that. To listen to
Fortnite is so, fellas.
You had to play a cancer game to know what the Rise of Skywalker is about.
You have to. Listen. As a surgeon, you have to cut open the tumor and find out what's inside. But let me say this: Fortnite's canon now. Let's discuss Fortnite in this list.
So look, I don't even play the game, so I don't even care about the. I don't even care about the fan base of Fortnite, but it's like. That's really crappy, you know. Like, because you have other formats you could have released it. You have Disney Plus, for goodness sake. Why couldn't you do something with that?
I feel like it wasn't up to JJ and the writing team for that, though. I feel like
Disney.
Well, it was your marketing department turns towards the executives of Epic Games. Hey, y'all, we saw what you did with Thanos in Endgame. What if we did a Star Wars event, but we put a bit of our movie in your game? Would that sweeten the deal?
But Fortnite, though? We have
Fortnite out of any other platform that they could have.
I'm just saying, sell your soul to the most popular game that's beating your own game. Speaking of which, yeah, you're right, Battlefront 2, which I haven't played it since they've fixed it, quote unquote, so I wouldn't... I actually have played Fortnite. I only experienced this event for 2 matches where it was cancer because I would be winning and then I see a person with a lightsaber approaching me at warp speed and go, well, shit, there I go. But that aside, back to Star Wars, though.
I was going to say, this immediately turned into a video game podcast. What the hell?
Yeah.
That's my bad. I admit that.
It's like, Fortnite!
Fortnite! But,
yeah, do we have any final thoughts on Rise of Skywalker before we move on? We gotta keep moving on a little bit.
Yeah. I just like the Palpatine stuff. They gave some like history with Rey, but with the parents being nobody, gave some payoff to that. But I do not like Rey Skywalker still.
I think that. Well, I think the film's crux, which really was, again, to quote another review I'd seen, the premise. Rey's last name is a space equivalent of being Ray Hitler. And so, the thing of Palpatine is such a reviled name. I think a really important moment.
You know, like
So I think a viral moment would have been if Rey owned that name. If she was like, I'm Rey Palpatine, and I'm going to define what Palpatine means to the galaxy as a savior. That would have been a great way to close this film out, is Rey who? Rey Palpatine. But no, we got the cheesiest Rey Skywalker.
Jeez.
And I wanted to puke.
Yeah, it's like...
That was the last line of the Skywalker saga.
And that's also the fucking irony of the Skywalker saga, and I was like,
And with the twin moons and
twin
stuff
suns.
Like
I think the twin suns was a nice touch to the ending, and it made sense for it to end it off like that, because that was the iconic moment of Star Wars, was the twin suns.
It was a beautiful shot.
Oh yeah.
But it definitely was. Well, it was disappointing to say the least. It's like this film, as hackish as it is, as fanfiction.net feeling as it is, I still enjoy it immensely, despite every single moment being... Like, there are moments in this film where I described it to my friend where I was like, to me, this film feels like a doctor who's punching your skin full of needles, but each needle is like an anesthetic where you go numb and you feel good and you feel kind of giggly. This film is that sensation where there's a bunch of painful little pricks, but then it goes, That's what this film felt to me. It was therapeutic. It felt like catharsis in a lot of ways, where I got to see like Lando's help scene where a bunch of ships come out, and again they had ships from.
Oh yeah,
like,
you're talking about the portal scene at the end of the... Or no, I'm sorry, the jump from hyperspace, not portal scene. What the hell?
Yeah, I know what you meant, but yeah, the but yeah, the rebel ship from the show pops up.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, the portal sequence.
Oh my gosh! He's never gonna let that down.
I'm never going to. That's the only thing that I'm gonna see it as.
Did it really take an hour and 30 minutes to name those as the worst law? Yeah, we have a lot to say.
But anyway, I think that pretty much wraps up everything we need to say about Rise of Skywalker. So I think we're about ready to move on. And I am very excited for this next one. I think we might need to fasten in our seatbelts for this next one, guys. Number 7.
Right.
Number 7. If it goes, come on, transition. Number 7 is The Last Jedi.
Oh boy,
Last Jedi, Last Jedi and Rise, like I said, 8, 7, and 6 are very close with each other. Rise of Skywalker came in at 45 points. Last Jedi came in at 47. 47.
Oh my god, that's a narrow margin.
Now, here's where we're gonna get a bit of a divide. I am one of those people that is on the end that says that this is a well-made Star Wars film. I actually did put this at number 3 on my list. That may make a few people puke. But a lot of people may not have recognized this, but on Metacritic, if you go over to see how Metacritic ranks their Star Wars movies based on how they scored them, they actually have Last Jedi at number 2.
Really?
Yeah.
As the second highest rating on Metacritic. And it really just... for me, it's not really that much of a surprise. I mean, to me, this is the most gorgeous Star Wars film, and I do like the red aesthetic of the film, even though it is the second movie of the franchise. They did take some risks with this movie with having it be a red aesthetic type movie, but also not only that, they didn't just take a risk with that. They took many risks, which is what I actually liked about this movie, because a few of them kind of paid off for me. Like the Luke Skywalker stuff, a lot of people weren't really into because they didn't really like the fact that he was just some old hermit on an island and he doesn't want to get involved in war and yada, 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 yada. I actually buy that because, like Dwayne said earlier, he's not this perfect character like everyone saw him as in Return of the Jedi. He's actually gone through conflict over the years ever since then, and it immediately shows by the time we see Luke Skywalker holding that lightsaber and then yeets it over his shoulder. By the time we saw that moment, a lot of people disagreed with it. I fell in love with it.
I disagree with it.
I fell in love with it. I don't know.
I loved it too. The thing with Luke was that it was definitely a... So, let me start off by saying what I like about The Last Jedi real quick.
Not very much to say. It's not very much to say because he has us at number 11, but...
I put this way at the bottom. But not because it's a... Okay, here's what I'm going to say, though. The Last Jedi is the best made Star Wars film. It is. In terms of what it's trying to accomplish, I respect it immensely. I think that could have been... I think Luke is fantastic. I love that arc thoroughly.
This is one of my favorite Luke Skywalker appearances.
Oh, of course, easily.
No
you
question.
may be shocked to hear this. But me too.
Everything else in this fucking film is a mess to me. Where I'm like, because the thing is, the risks that you identified, or like you say, like this film took a lot of risks. To me, this film takes a lot of fake risks, where there's ideas that were... It feels like this film wants to be subversive. It wants to be different. And I respect that. This is, to me, when I first saw this, I was like, this is the artsy Star Wars film. This is the Star Wars film that... I knew it when I saw it. Was like, this is the one where everyone's going to be divided. And it's going to be a huge divide, because there's going to be a pool of critics that respect the artistry of this film and what the film's intentions are. And then there's people... like me, where I'm like, I needed this film to deliver on these ideas. I need this film. I've seen these ideas better executed in other films. I've seen films that really do pervert my expectations and work them in a way that's clever. This film feels like it walks back a lot of the cool ideas. And also, as somebody who is very progressive overall, and like, again, annoyingly so to my family at least, I hate that this film has the guts to lecture me about greed and rich people bad in a film made by fucking Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, at least with Disney, they try to go with the direction of not having to appeal to kids like as much. Like they try to add in those like adult themes, like how the original trilogy tried to add in like the family themes, like how The Last Jedi tried to do the same thing here with taking chances of like telling us that, you know, we're getting closer to the end of the saga, and so it's kind of time to start wrapping things up a little bit. But the things that happen in The Last Jedi, they don't really feel like they were complete, which is nice because this is only the second film of a trilogy. If this was the last film, it would have been different. I would have been a little bit more conflicted with that, but it's not. It's the second film, and I don't want it to feel like we're just ending everything off right away. Leave a little bit of leeway in there for The Rise of Skywalker to develop and to catch up on what The Last Jedi tried to do. And that's what I think was the plus of Last Jedi.
Well, here's the thing about that, though. It's like, yeah, I agree with you that I don't want every story thread to be you know, summed up in this movie because it is only the second film in the trilogy. But the issue is that Ryan took most of JJ's ideas and it felt like he wrapped it up in this movie. So when we get to The Rise of Skywalker, JJ has little to work off with other than having to retcon certain stuff that that Ryan already did. Like this movie feels like it is the end when it wasn't supposed to be.
Well, another thing too was that originally for Rise of Skywalker, JJ wasn't initially like the original choice to direct Rise of Skywalker. It was originally Colin Trevorrow from Jurassic World, but I hear like some from reports saying that he got fired because of how Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom ended up becoming. So they didn't want to have to go through all of that same issues with The Rise of Skywalker, if that's what it was ever going to be called. We don't know what it's going to... Actually, I heard it was going to be called Duel of the Fates, which I thought was going to be a horrible subtitle. But originally, we can't really like hark so much on, you know, J.J. Abrams like had the idea of like bringing in Snoke and introducing new characters and then saying Rian Johnson threw it all away just so that J.J. could have like some reason for those actions for The Last Jedi to happen, because originally J.J. Abrams was not the initial choice for Rise of Skywalker. It was originally Colin, so And if we saw the reports saying that Colin originally did not have the intention of bringing back Emperor Palpatine. Emperor Palpatine never existed.
Which all goes back to this.
Well, the writers threw Kathleen Kennedy under the bus the moment they could. Like, the first thing that they announced in the post Rise of Skywalker reports was Kathleen Kennedy brought back Palpatine, and I was like, oh, yeah, it seems like a last ditch idea. Because I don't think they should have brought any villain back. I think that the Rise of Skywalker, again, the best part of this film is everything with Kylo, Rey, and Luke.
Yeah.
I think that the way this film ends with Kylo actually in an interesting conflict to explain. You now have this. You never have Vader at the helm of an army. You always have Vader as the dragon, as a second in command. I loved the idea that there's no Snoke. It's just Kylo and this entire army, and Hux is his little bitch. That was an interesting little exploration we could have had. But that's where I do get the Rise of Skywalker. Mad at the Rise of Skywalker, I was like, you didn't need to put Palpatine in here to walk this idea back. This was fine.
Yeah, though. I'll just say for the record, I think this movie's okay. No, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I'm just in the middle on it.
Yeah, D-WIZZLE actually did put this at number 7. He's kind of right on the money with this one.
Snoke felt like a wasted opportunity because, like, I mean, I know people didn't really care for him that much in The Force Awakens, and he felt more interesting in The Last Jedi, which makes it even more frustrating, but you don't get a great actor like Andy Serkis and just waste him in 1.5 movies. Well, you know, it felt like there was so much more potential with him. That was the issue, and that's what I feel like with some of the stuff that was set up in The Force Awakens. It had really interesting concepts that I wanted to see more of, and for Rian Johnson to just put a halt on it and do something else that feels less inspired in certain aspects, it just feels frustrating. With the whole Luke situation, I like everything except for the stuff with Kylo personally, because I still don't like that he even had the idea of killing his nephew in his sleep, and I feel like he would have had more care with his father's lightsaber. I know the idea is that he doesn't want the Jedi to exist anymore, and that's fine, but for him to not have more of a reaction with seeing this random girl get his father's lightsaber, then say like, I don't want this anymore, it's like it just doesn't feel consistent with what came before in the Return of the Jedi. Yeah, you can have him be reluctant and have a struggle, but you can't go back that far into his development where he feels like a completely different person, you know?
I mean, I don't feel like he's a different person necessarily. I think so. Again, it's so funny because I haven't even gotten to tear into the parts of the film I want to tear into yet. But to defend Luke, because I really do think I need a mount of defense for this real quick. I think Luke being the failed hero in this film was a beautiful thing to explore. I think that, again, my favorite scene that I kept talking to my dad about was the scene of Mark Hamill's Luke ghoulishly standing over a young Solo with a lightsaber. Where I was just like, this is terrifying. This is a nightmare. And I feel a sense of fear. I was like, this is a great framing for the scene. This film has some great framing for its shots. And what was one of the ones that I thought was really exemplary. And I think that central plot thread with Luke being this failed hero who realizes that he wants to withdraw from the Force because he wants to do no harm, no impact, it feels very Zen. It feels very much like what a Zen monk would do. It feels very Jedi. But what I love when Puppet Yoda comes back and is like, forget about those texts, you have to do what's right. And then Luke at the end of the film, in what precedes the lamest death in the series, in my opinion, where Luke looks like he farted like an old man who was asleep and then farts himself awake and fades away. Where whenever I watch the film, I just go, huh! When he dies.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Puppet Yoda, by the way.
Yeah, Puppet Yoda.
Not CGI Yoda from the prequels. They kept up with the continuity of Yoda from Empire Return, and they made it Puppet Yoda, and I love Rian Johnson for that.
The greatest thing before Baby Yoda has.
I never saw Baby Yoda yet, so I wouldn't know.
No, I haven't watched The Mandalorian.
I haven't seen Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian is one of the best things to happen to the series in recent memory.
Mm. Yeah, show.
I just finished it, and I adore it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what the new trilogy could have been in some ways.
They had to play it.
But what I was gonna say though is that with like Luke coming to the realization, and then at the end confronting Kylo, that felt epic. That felt right. That felt justified. Excuse me. That felt like a fantastic plot thread. It is when I look at the rest of this film, which is Cassio Bite, which is Cassie is a keyboard. Cassio. Canto Bite. It's Rose taking Finn's one great character moment and breaking it up, which, if she had a better written line, could have been okay. But no, it's her taking away a moment that I thought. I mean, I hated that it really did come down to Finn's gonna die when he was going to suicide bomb the laser that was gonna hit the bunker.
God.
But I hated that. But I liked that Finn, after basically being a failure, was like, no, I'm going to save the day. And now what I wish had happened was that they found a way for Finn to either survive, which feels very Star Wars, as just improbable survivability, or he dies, but everyone's like, no, that was a sacrifice that was worth it. It's the beginning of a victory. It's about redeeming yourself. But this film's theme of like falling apart and failure, feels like it walks back on every idea. Where it feels like in the writing room, when I look at this film, it's as if I was again taking creative writing class. It feels like somebody what's the opposite of what a person would want to happen in this story, because this film wants to mirror Empire Strikes Back, my favorite film. It wants to mirror the despair at the end of that film, but it wants to mirror it in this weird, we're doing our own thing, but not quite doing our own thing way.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this movie is filled with the same thing I've said with Attack of the Clones. This movie feels like it has a lot of great ideas, and I agree with you 100% that I like the approach that they're dealing with Luke, and even some of the Rose stuff was interesting. And the Finn was interesting to an extent, and the Rey stuff, blah 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 blah. But it's just the way he decided to execute it felt heavy-handed. Like,
it felt
many different ways.
Yes.
I felt like there could have been another way for you to do this. I'm okay with you going down this road, but you don't have to do it this way.
The thing is, too, and I hate the thing is, this is personal for me, where I actually hate the trope of a plot's entire premise is based around miscommunication. And the thing is, I get that Holdo, who is my least favorite character in this film.
Oh God, that purple haircut!
Damn, I wouldn't go that far. Holy shit!
I fucking hate her, bro. I fucking hate her.
But no, I hate Holdo because to me she is the epitome of the writing of this film, which is malicious. This film comes off as malicious to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Where it feels like they wanted to. I needed to break your expectations. I needed you to feel like dissuade or like take it from the path. This film feels aggressive to me. It feels like a threat to reposition one of the critiques I heard against Rise of Skywalker. This film feels like it wanted to just do the opposite of what people expected, rather than actually develop those ideas, because I think a more subversive road would have been to have Luke live. Now you have to explain, because now you have to deal with, we have a mentor who is broken, but still functional enough. And then you didn't kill Leia, you instead, and the thing is, I hated the scene initially, but I've grown to appreciate Leia pulling herself back onto the ship. I still don't like it, but I've come to realize that, hey, it's alright. It hurts, but that's okay.
And you needed something to establish that she knows some stuff in the Force by the time we get to Rise of Skywalker and she's training Rey. So.
I don't even think that was the plan for her, though, because I feel like her being Force-sensitive made sense, because I love that Force-sensitive became a term for The Force Awakens. That was the first time we got that in the lingo.
I mean, yeah, I agree.
I think that was great. And I think her being Force-sensitive made sense.
Yeah.
When they were like, no, she's a Jedi who trained in the Force, I was like, cool, But this feels like that you really needed to set me up for, and I just did not buy it. I was like, you're telling me that in the vacuum of space, where you would have experienced explosive decompression, where you would have died, again, you killed off poor Admiral Akbar.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that. We didn't even talk about it.
But man's got put in a trap he didn't even realize. He couldn't even call it.
In my opinion, but whatever.
It's like,
we don't need to talk about Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, I mean, but, I said this before, but it's like, do you know how more emotionally impactful it would have been if Akbar was the one who did the Holdo maneuver instead of Holdo herself?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I automatically cared.
I mean, it would have been, for a lot of people, it would have been someone who has the same energy as the traitor meme dying. Yeah. Traitors, I feel like, one from The Force Awakens, and I think that having our homie Akbar die would have been really impactful.
That's I think that like a lot.
I also would have bought Akbar as a second in command a lot quicker than Holdo, who kind of just got pulled out of nowhere.
Yeah, just out of nowhere, and she apparently has history with Leia that never comes up.
I even defended this to my father when we talked about this, where I was like, "Hey, I understand in militaries." There's often a lot of times when somebody you don't know becomes appointed as your boss. That happens a lot in a lot of militaries. But with Holdo, who is so obstructionist, who literally the entire plot could be inverted if she had just spoke once. If she had said a single part of her plan, and it was like, hey, Poe, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to do something real quick. If she didn't wait for all those ships to get blown up, that would have made that character a little bit more understandable, but this film feels like it has to subvert expectations. It has to teach me this lesson, which and again, that's why it makes me frustrated. And this is why I hate this one the most, is that it feels like an angry film in a way, and I know it's not really the most elegant way to put that.
It feels like this movie is angry at you for being a Star Wars fan, like.
And that's what I think. It feels like a middle finger, in a way, where I'm like, this film feels like, even when it makes no sense to do a thing, it does this thing. And that's kind of just where I'm at.
Well, also here's the thing about Admiral Akbar coming back instead of having Holdo be in command and, having Akbar be, second in command. Like, yeah, it would have been impactful if Admiral Akbar did the Holdo maneuver, but to me, it feels like we're jumping the gun a little bit too much, because we're forgetting about the subplot that happened in the movie, which a lot of people do, because it's to me also, I will admit, it's not really an amazing subplot. It's not the best idea that they would have went for, but and with Holdo having to keep everything a secret from all of our main characters because plot armor. But here's the thing, though: if you replace Holdo with Admiral Akbar, and you keep up with that same subplot of, keeping everything a secret, would you really believe Akbar at that point? Would you really see Akbar keeping secrets from anybody?
Here's the thing.
That's the crux of my thing. Is that you first?
Oh, I would say, then why don't you just have a subplot that there's a spy in the whatever ship that they're in that's helping the first order track them through light speed, and it turns out to be Holdo the entire time, and Akbar's like, we're going to do an investigation of how this is going on and who's betraying us, blah 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 blah. And then you get into that whole, you can go into your whole thing with Rose and Finn going to a different planet to try and get the hacker or whatever.
I'm not going to even go into that.
I mean, I think I would have liked that even more if they brought Maz Kanata with them or something.
I was gonna say that's another disadvantage with the Last Jedi. Is they never really established Maz Kanata as much because she only got one solid minute throughout the whole movie. If they made her a character that has been captured and captive on Canto Bight or whatever, and Rose and Finn go out on this rescue mission to save Maz, that would have been more of not only a better character arc for Maz Kanata, but also for driving the story along and having to get us familiar with all these characters and having to see different interactions, which I do understand why Maz Kanata only got 1 minute in the film, because the actress only had Like she was working on Black Panther at the time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Lupita Nyong'o, yeah.
Yeah, she was working on Black Panther, so she never really got a lot of time with The Last Jedi. But it would have been really cool if we did get to see Maz Kanata get utilized just a little bit more than what we got.
I mean, yeah, Maz would have been great. I think that this film underutilizes JJ's ideas, and I mean, while I do appreciate what it contributes, again, some of the most visually distinct scenes in the series as well.
This is the most visually stunning film of the whole franchise.
I disagree with that because Exegol and the celebration planet they land on as a Skywalker.
I'm sorry, that Exegol sequence looks good, but anything that The Last Jedi had to offer looked better than Exegol to me. It did.
I think that the only thing that so yeah, that's just personal. We could quibble on that one because I'm like, I mean, I'm not saying
because it
that
did feel like it was like Exegol was like final battle sort of esque, whereas Last Jedi had like visually stunning shots like all over the place, like left and right. So it's just you know.
Yeah, I think Last Jedi has a couple of key shots that I think are amazing. Which again, the throne room battle, which fucking. That scene was brutal and intense, and I loved it.
The Last Jedi, yeah. That's instantly one of the best fight scenes in the whole saga.
Well, that's definitively the best fight scene in the whole series. I'm going to say that.
I don't know if I could say that, yeah.
I'm going to die on that hill. I'm like, this was the most brutal and intensive scene, because you could tell that, one, these aren't Jedi. There's no proper there's no proper dueling techniques. It's just... I'm going to turn a lightsaber on into your skull.
Right. If y'all are expecting like the high choreography of the prequels, like y'all are spoiled. Like they're obviously not in that caliber.
But that's what makes it better to me is it's very raw.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about it was that it's this very visceral, very raw, very like we're just flailing as best we can, but we're both clearly powerful and able to outmaneuver the whip sword again. In every single Star Wars roleplay or tabletop I get involved with, I'm going to go for the whip sword now because that's amazingly cool.
Oh yeah, the whip.
Those guards were the coolest thing in that film to me, where I was just like, this is impressive. And then the lightspeed crash. Holdo is a horrible character. That scene where she yeets herself out of existence is beautiful.
Yeah.
The salt planet, insanely beautiful.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I do love the visuals in Rise of Skywalker, but Last Jedi has more impactful moments, cinematic.
Yeah, that I will give it. Is that what it is to me is that Rise of Skywalker is to me what I prefer, a even spread of visuals where I'm like, I can't say anything that pleasant. Again, the one planet they go to with I forget the name of the planet, but it's like it's where the First Order has taken over, and it's like the searchlights everywhere, and it feels very imperial. Like Nazi Germany, in like its like essence or like its structure, where it's door-to-door troopers knocking.
I know what you're talking about. Kijimi, that's what it was.
Kijimi, yeah, I really enjoyed Kijimi's like structure and design immensely, and that's to me what I prefer. Where I'm like, I feel a sense of peril and danger from this, compared to Rise of the Last Jedi, where I'm like, there's a few distinct scenes in this film that will stick with me forever. That lightspeed crash is one where I think of where I'm like, this is just an amazing scene. Or this Luke squaring up with Kylo, an amazing scene visually.
That's essentially just the movie as a whole. To start wrapping things up a little bit, because we do got to move on a little bit. But to start wrapping things up, Last Jedi as a whole is that this is going to be a movie that it still needs time to get used to, because a lot of people are not all for all the decisions that have been made in this movie. It's going to be like another Empire Strikes Back, except not as like iconic or as, well shot or well shot. I mean, yeah, Last Jedi kind of does it better, but like Last Jedi is going to be like another Empire, where it's going to be like people are going to grow on this film over time, and they're actually going to watch it as a movie instead of having to be all back in the corner, like trying to be all like, I've never seen this movie just because I hear other people saying like it's a really bad movie, so I'm just going to keep away from it. They're going to see this movie eventually, and then they're going to say, oh, okay, I do see, like, I understand what they're trying to go for, and I can agree with this stuff. So it's essentially going to be another Empire, but it's just now it's not the time for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, my closing thoughts on this is that this film got panned because the critics said it was amazing, and when you come into this film, I think a lot of people were like me, where this film kind of hurts in a way, where you watch it and you go, this script feels infuriating and inorganic, and it, again, moments like Poe's Yo Mama joke with Hux feel forced and awkward, and it feels not Star Wars, and that's what I think, to me, makes this film hurt the most, is it feels like something interesting, but it feels like not Star Wars. And that's why I rank it so low on my list, is that really this film feels like very called the film that people who don't like Star Wars like. And I disagree with that, but I'm like, I see where they're coming from, where I'm like, it is that movie that, like, it's so different that if you're an outsider, this might be a great in for you. I think it will have that reputation where if you don't like Star Wars, oh, this is a great film to watch because it's not Star Wars. But for me, somebody who I think values a lot of what Star Wars' structure is, which is simple stories, it feels just uncreative. It feels kind of hard to watch and malicious. Again, I really cling to that word, malicious. It feels like that. It feels just kind of harmful.
My closing thoughts are I feel like the audience for Empire were a different audience that we have now. Like, I think moviegoers in general and Star Wars fans have different expectations of what Star Wars should be and what it could be. And honestly, it's like, this is the 8th film in a franchise, so I wanted things to go in a different direction. But at the same time, it's like, you can go in a different direction, but you have to be consistent with what came before. So this movie really depends on how much of a Star Wars fan you are, honestly, because I do feel like this is I think it's a good movie, but as a Star Wars film, it's very polarizing. So it just really, and then it doesn't help that, there hasn't been a plan from the beginning with this trilogy. So, and Ryan was able to do whatever he wanted, regardless of what happened in The Force Awakens. So it's like, it just really depends. It really depends how much you're invested in this franchise, for you to like really appreciate what Last Jedi was trying to do. I do appreciate what Last Jedi is trying to do, and like I said, I'm not a hard Star Wars fan to please, And yeah, I do want you to shake my, beliefs in how I look at Star Wars. I want you to question that stuff. Mm-hmm. I do want new questions. I do want new stuff to be explored. I want new concepts to be, brought up. But it's like, when you're dealing with legacy characters that meant a lot to people and telling them that they aren't, the inspiring characters that you grew up with, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow, regardless of what message you're trying to portray. So at the end of the day, I'm not mad at Rian Johnson for what he did, and I still think he was a good person to direct Star Wars, but overall, I just think there needed to be more direction. That's how I feel about this trilogy in general. It just needed more direction.
And I am looking forward to Rian Johnson's new trilogy, if it ever is still happening. Like, I really want to see like
giving him a whole trilogy?
There have been reports saying that Rian Johnson was going to create his own Star Wars trilogy with his own mindset, without having to be so.
I'm very fascinated to see how that would turn out.
So much like in his. He doesn't have to feel like he has to follow a story template that's been going on for generations. No, he can actually create his new.
I feel like if he got his own story, it would definitely be fascinating.
But yeah, that's going to be our take on The Last Jedi. Number 6, this is the last movie for these past 3 movies being so close to each other. Number 6, I'm going to sit this one out for a little bit because I don't really have much to say. I don't have many good things to say about this movie. It's going to be Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, at number 6.
Oh, you want me to take this one? You want me to take this one?
You gotta go in, please.
So The Rise of Skywalker came in at 45 points. The Last Jedi came in at 47. Rogue One came in at 48. Just 1 point higher than The Last Jedi, and I'm still salty about it.
Are you upset?
I'm still a little salty about it. So I'm going to turn it over to you two for a little bit. I actually have to go take a quick bathroom break for me. But you guys can keep going on. I just got to go really bad. So I will be right back. You guys go along.
Okay, so I feel like I'm pretty much going to be representing Ruby because we pretty much have similar thoughts about this movie. Though I'm not as intense as Ruby is, but it's like, okay, so do keep in mind that, you know, going into this, I think having spin-off anthology films for Star Wars, I think is a great idea because I think the world needs to expand more outside of the main storyline of the numerical films. So I do think this was a great opportunity, you know, not as major characters as they are in the numerical films, and, you know, expand on their stories and stuff like that, because that's the type of stuff that I like from the Clone Wars TV shows and the video games and some of the novelizations from different characters outside the Skywalkers or whatever. So I thought this was a fantastic idea. But this movie, I know this is a movie that a lot of people love, and some people say it's one of their favorite Star Wars movies. But for me, I don't hate this movie, but I don't care about this movie at all. I really don't. This leaves the least amount of impact on me in the entire franchise so far. Spoilers, I put this on the very bottom of my list. And so okay. Yes, so, I know it's like it baffles a lot of people, but the thing about this film is that, for one thing, I'll say, to give context for me, I'm not a huge fan of war films. Yeah, so I think they're all tread the same formula over and over again. I just don't like the tone and structure of how they create stories. It feels very hollow and kind of shallow at certain moments. I know it's hard. I know that's Will Smith and Private Ryan. Blah blah blah. I mean, they were like to me. So it's like it baffles me that so many Star Wars fans and moviegoers in general kept saying to me that this movie actually feels like a war film. And I'm like, what? Excuse me? Excuse me?
All right, I am back. Are we still talking about Rogue One? We still talking about Rogue One? All right, cool. This movie sucks. This movie's absolute trash.
It's not good. Like, there is no characterization in this movie. There is no story. I mean, there is a story, but they take so much time padding out a very simplistic.
The first two acts are horribly paced.
Like, they're taking the idea of getting the plans for the Death Star and stretching that out to a 2-hour film, and it doesn't work. This type of storyline doesn't work for a 2-hour film. It works for a one-off show thing. It may work off for like a little quick thing to give exposition, but as a 2-hour film, structurally, it does not work. I don't remember any characters in this movie outside of K2SO, Jin, and Donnie Yen's character, and I don't know his name, but they were literally the standouts of the movie.
Donnie Yen.
Even Jin Erso wasn't even that good of a character, and we still remember her name just because she's the mainline character of this film.
Like, I think this movie is manipulating people thinking it's a great movie because of the last 45 minutes. The last 45 minutes are incredible. They are great. It's one of the best space battles I've seen in Star Wars, even though I like the Return of the Jedi one a little bit more.
But the Return of the Jedi and A New Hope battles are better.
The Darth Vader stuff.
The way I feel about this film is the way you feel about this film is the way I feel about Last Jedi. Where I'm like, this film is tricky. We'll think it's good. Well, like, damn it, but no, okay, I'm gonna actually, I do have feelings about Rogue One where I'm like, This is number 7, if I recall correctly, on my list. Where it's just
this is number 7 on your list.
Yeah, it's very middling to me. Where I'm like, this film feels like a meandering film. It's inoffensive. I think as someone who does appreciate certain war films, like I really intensely can respect the artistry that goes into war films. This film, because it's a science fiction film that can never truly capture the horrors and uplifts of war, and never can explore those ideas, was disappointing in that regard. When this film, I think, was initially pitched as a heist film, I got really excited because I imagined this sleek setup for like a Star Wars film where you get a couple of ragtag rogues trying to get those Death Star plans. But what we got was a war film with a heist subplot, really. Or not heist subplot, with a heist plot nestled in there. And I was disappointed by that.
And that was the problem. Going into this, like, they're setting up expectations for us to not care about these guns, about the Death Star plans, and Darth Vader's there. It's like, oh, this is going to happen right before A New Hope, isn't it? Yeah. They're all going to die, isn't it? So I automatically don't care if these people live or die because I already know what's going to happen. And nobody
foregone conclusion.
After this movie, nobody talks about them. They don't acknowledge them in the sequel trilogy. So why am I supposed to care?
What makes this film really matter is the last scenes with Darth Vader and Leia. That's what makes this whole film work. Also, Darth Vader with the puns, which is very out of character and weird. Don't choke on your aspirations. So I was like, what? That doesn't sound right.
I actually like that.
I liked it. I definitely chuckled, but I was like, that doesn't sound right.
I liked the joke, but I didn't like it on Darth Vader. That's not Darth Vader to me.
I feel like another Sith would need to be established. Like, some joke Sith would have to exist where, like, someone funny. Or a Sith that has a sense of humor, which we haven't had that yet in a Star Wars film, and I hope we do get that someday. I think, though, with this film, and I'll keep this brief because I know we gotta get through 5 other films.
Right.
I think this movie, to me, what makes it not painful is that even as a foregone conclusion, it's interesting to note that they didn't think they were going to be able to kill all the characters off. They thought Disney wouldn't go for that. So I do think that there's a little bit of merit and respect I have. I feel like what happened was they probably wrote a conclusion for each character. And then Disney was like, oh, you can actually kill them all off. We don't care. Then they went, oh, shit, and then threw the papers up and gave up on writing a conclusion for any of them. So what was interesting about them is just gone, where they all died. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense because you can't really have these crack-shot ace characters
because if they're not going to be mentioned in any of the other films, you can't really keep them in this movie. So it's like we already know that they're going to die anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, I wish... The thing is, the problem is, though, because this film has a heist angle for a little bit, is that you have this really interesting setup where I'm like, wow, if this was a heist film, you could have had a cool character study where there's this character, there's Jin, who we can't trust, but we need to. She's the hero of the film, and then you've got her buddy, I forgot his name, because he's that bland and unforgettable.
Oh, Cassian? You mean the worst Star Wars character of all time that does not deserve a Disney Plus show?
Jesus.
He was horrible. Why does he have
He was god-awful. And I felt so bad for the man that played him.
Yeah, it's not the actor's fault. It's just how he was written was
the writing. Horrible. This is the worst written character in all of Star Wars. You can talk about all your Jar Jar Binkses, Rose Ticos, L337s, and whoever the fuck else is there. I don't care. Cassian is awful. Go fuck yourself. I don't care. Cassian sucked. He sucked. He sucked.
You two
I am not excited for that show that he has on Disney Plus. I don't know why the fuck he has a show when other characters deserve more of a show than he does. Donnie Yen's character should have had a TV show.
Donnie Yen's character, yeah.
Let's fucking talk. Yeah, no, behind that, Donnie Yen's character, again, someone who studies Buddhism, I was like, this feels very zen. I like this character. He dies. Oh, okay, that's cool, I guess.
And it's like, okay, I'm not saying everyone has to survive at the end. What'd you say?
Yeah, he's like, this is the way of Zen. Fuck you.
Exactly. I'm not now, keep in mind, I'm not expecting everyone to come out alive in this movie, but why would you kill off any interesting characters in this movie? Why couldn't a couple of them...
Donnie Yen was the first character that made the... again, force sensitivity was a cool concept. Donnie Yen was the first extrapolation of this idea that felt really cool, where I'm like, oh shit, we got monks. I was like, yo, we have monks.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Like, how cool it would have been to see like his backstory, growing up, being blind and learning being force sensitive.
He's Daredevil, pretty much. Functionally, he's a staff-wielding blind person. He's Daredevil.
Or what would have been cool if, like in the sequel trilogy, Rey would have met him when he's really old and he teaches him some stuff or whatever. Like,
or Maz would have had someone to talk to. And because Donnie's blind, you could have an excuse. Well, I mean, he doesn't have anyone to really guide him, so he can't do anything aside from sit in this fucking house.
Yeah.
But the thing was, is get to close it out. I'm gonna. This film's the last scene with Vader that becomes a horror film is so cool that I think that's what this film is riding on. Is just that last moment of Vader basically going in with the energy of Michael Myers and just destroying people. That is the iconic... That is like how Solo has the Darth Vader sequence. Or Darth Maul sequence, sorry. This has the Vader sequence, but this was the successful original. Where I went, whoa. We finally get to see Vader with, like, real horrifying abilities. Where the rebel soldiers are fleeing as fast as they can, and they can't escape because it's Vader. Of course he can't get away.
See, and that's the thing that's the main struggle about this movie, is that if all you're really trying to do is just do so much build up to all of that. If you're trying to build up this film all this time just for that one sequence at the end, it is a pretty well shot sequence, and it's probably one of the most iconic sequences in Star Wars to date. It doesn't really save the film from anything, and it really just doesn't really make the film any better. It's just like, we're writing all of this just for this one sequence that you're only going to be talking about this sequence because you're not going to remember anything else from previously in the film. So, we don't care. Yeah. And that to me just felt like it was more of an insult when I saw this movie, because when I saw previews for this movie, I still wasn't even on the fence with this movie. I was just kind of like, eh. And then when I saw it, and then the Darth Vader sequence came up, and I was like, you motherfucker. God damn it, I wasted my time.
It was, when you put it like that, Ruby, it does feel like a fandom cheap shot.
It is.
This'll get him real good.
Yeah, it is. It is a fandom cheap shot. That's what this movie is.
Right. I was Phantom Menacing the entire time. The first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, that was good. That was a good movie. But then the more I watch it,
see it. It's like the more I watch it, it's like, okay, yeah, never mind.
This is how I feel about The Last Jedi, where I was like, watches it the first time, that's alright. Watches it again. Ow. Watches it again. This feels like a bone saw in my spine.
Right. So, yeah, see how...
I feel like we have common ground. We can relate, even if it's over different films.
Exactly. But yeah,
all right.
Stay was with me. I'm just like, I shouldn't have to sit through 2 hours of boring shit to get to great stuff, And then you also have characters that are established in the Clone Wars and Rebels, like Forrest Whitaker's character, who was wasted, doesn't do anything.
Like Saw Gerrera wasted.
Gerrera wasted.
He has a pet octopus.
Oh my god, that tentacle thing!
Oh my god,
he has a pet
there's so much in this film I forgot about. By the way, K2SO is the only gem in this film. I'm gonna say that.
Absolutely.
Which I didn't. Yeah. I personally didn't care for K2SO, but whatever.
Listen, K2SO has HK-47 energy, and I respect that. Even if he's not HK-47, I was like, you have a sarcastic droid energy, and I like you.
And I actually like a droid that can actually, kick someone's ass. Finally, got a droid that can do that. So that's just the only thing for me.
R2D2 didn't even need any lines.
Revenge of the Sith, he got kicked by a droid.
Make HK-47.
He's just R2 was taunting those droids. Are you kidding me?
BB-8's also devastating as well. BB-8 commits murder several times.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Look at him in The Last Jedi. Oh wait, no, you don't care about The Last Jedi.
Freaking Swiss Army knives.
BB-8 will body you and then laugh at your corpse.
That's essentially what he did, and I was all for it. I was like, yes, that is my new R2, except R2 is still better.
See, I actually also I loved Dio, aside from JoJo's name.
Oh, Dio.
From Rise of Skywalker, yeah.
I adore that. It was it actually made it soured it for me when I realized he was voiced by J.J. Abrams, because I was like, oh, the director's playing the abused droid. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Because he was abused throughout the movie. He was abused when going into the making of it.
But I actually kind of like the idea of a no, thank you. I thought that was cute and endearing in a sad way.
No, thank you.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that was perfect.
Oh,
yeah, no, I adored that little Dio. I wanted to pat on the head, but then I was like, it's with the J.J. Abrams, and I was like, damn it, you soured everything.
Yeah, that it appeals to people like The Last Jedi, because people that wanted more of a realistic tone in Star Wars. So
you wanted realism in Star Wars? The hell?
I mean, I think that's what they were trying to go for, which I'm like, that's not what it works in Star Wars, but whatever.
Listen, this feels, it's like we put some science fiction in your fantasy. Do you like that in your cereal? No, not really.
Oh, can we put some gritty realism in your movie then? Oh yeah, we'll eat that up.
All right. What is number 5?
So yeah, that's pretty much all of our thoughts on Rogue One. It's still salty that it's higher than The Last Jedi. I definitely disagree with that. But moving up the list, moving into top 5, we're going to close out the prequels. It is Revenge of the Sith at 59 points in total. I feel like this movie is way too high. Personally, I feel like this movie should be just a little bit lower because, yeah, it does share the qualities of, the prequels were building up to this movie. So essentially, this movie had the advantage of having previous movies build up to this and having it be seen as this big important movie that everyone has to go see, which they did. But still, that doesn't really accept the fact that this movie still shares some prequel trilogy qualities. Some the CGI is improved, but it's not perfect. The horrible dialogue still exists. It's probably even worse than Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, arguably.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I said arguably, it's arguably one of the worst, but the twist of Anakin turning to the dark side, I don't think was fully fleshed out in my opinion. I felt like there was a little bit of loopholes.
What have I done?
Yeah, I feel like there were a little bit of loopholes here and there, and then the Order 66 stuff. To me, Order 66 it just doesn't make sense to me because it just kind of seems like, okay, you made a order that bombs your own military.
Well, if you watch the Clone Wars,
When you watch that's what I mean. Before the Clone Wars, Order 66 made no sense whatsoever. And if you don't include the Clone Wars concept as a whole, in general, Order 66 just doesn't really make any sense.
So this movie is this movie is them trying to shoehorn in the important stuff in the last movie when we were dicking around in the first 2 films.
Yeah.
So it's
that's what it was. Honestly,
yeah. If the mini series was episode 2, I think things would have been fleshed out more because this honestly feels like they didn't spend enough time in the Clone Wars and developing Anakin and Obi-Wan as best friends and characters in general, and they didn't expand on the marriage of Anakin and Padme. Yeah,
they really just went in saying we're friends.
Yeah, so it's this movie is literally trying to play catch up with stuff, and things like Order 66 and the turn of Anakin feel rushed, But with all that being said, though, I do think this is the best. I don't think this is really an argument for most people, but this is the best film of the prequels by far.
Oh, yeah.
Like the characters feel more natural. They actually feel like human beings. They actually have natural interactions with one another. The action actually feels intense. It actually feels like there's technique with certain of the set pieces. There's more weight to certain dynamics with Anakin and Padme's relationship and them trying to figure out about the pregnancy and stuff like that. Seeing Sidious manipulate Anakin and turn to the dark side, all that was interesting. This is Sidious at his peak right now in this movie.
It's watching Sidious steal the show. Is this movie also? Let's talk about the screech he does as he spirals towards.
That's the worst. That is the worst lightsaber fight in all of Star Wars. That's the worst one.
It is.
That was so stupid.
It was atrocious.
I also do enjoy that Sidious was. Listen, I just enjoy how evil Palpatine is. I'm just like, oh my god, he's so obviously. What is it? Finish him. Or what does he say when Dooku gets scissored? Do it. Yeah, do it. Do it.
I was going to say, I really want to hear what Beefaloh has to say about this movie, because he has this at number 3 on his list.
This is number 3 on my list, because to me, this feels like it feels very Star Wars. I feel like as many flaws this film has, and it has a great many, which I think that's a recurring theme with my list, is that do I like what you're going for overpowers if you execute that well in a lot of cases. So with this film, I enjoy it thoroughly, where I'm like, the melodrama feels good.
Yeah.
The fighting feels over the top. Mustafar is the most final boss feeling planet in existence.
That's my favorite.
The scenery is over the top. This film feels like an epic. There are moments that even with shit dialogue, the impact it's kind of like a truck with the younglings, and seeing that last youngling struggle to defend Bail Organa. I'm like, there are moments in that film that will just resonate with me, because even if they're not the best, the concept hits home enough where I'm like, oh my god, this is just fucked up. And this film, even the thing is that if this was a better film, in a way, the badness of this film, which I admit this film is flawed, immensely flawed, but that softens the blow of this film in a lot of ways. Where again, if this film were more serious and more had more writing oomph behind it, would it be kind of harder to watch tonally, because younglings dying is a hard image for me to process. Like, the more I thought, I was like, if this film were better written, this could be really agonizing. But it's not. It's more cheesy and schlocky, and tries to deliver this to you in an emotional beat that resonates with me, because it is hard to watch kids die. But it's something about this film where it swings and misses, but in a way the bat goes flying and it hits the ball. And I'm like, it's this bizarre scenario where I'm like, you somehow threw your bat at the ball and it hit? And I'm like, this works in some bizarre dimension where I critically can't explain to you why it works. It does.
You see, here's the interesting thing that I found out earlier, is that I'm actually... I wish that Kosa Nation was with us tonight, because looking at his list, he actually has Revenge of the Sith at number 1. So
he has what?
He has Kosa Nation has Revenge of the Sith at number 1 on his list.
I understand that. No, I completely understand that sentiment.
Yeah, I do too.
This film is an epic. It feels very epic in tone and nature. I think this film is... I think it deserves the flack that it gets, but at the same time, hello there, General Grievous and his everything. This film, despite being as flawed and as weird as the other prequels, somehow pulls everything off, in my opinion. I can't... I can't explain it. Here, I'm going to use my adult words. I'm going to use, to the best of my ability, this film is, to me... It shares a kinship with The Rise of Skywalker for me personally, where it's definitely breakneck energy. This film is events happening, but the thing is that, in a way, it delivers the hype of its build-up. That fight with Anakin and Obi-Wan, as over the top and unnecessarily wild as it is, matches the level of pressure. Padme dying from a broken heart is stupid, but it fits the surreal nature of the film, where it's a fantasy. It feels like a fantasy story. It feels like a very high Arthurian tale to me. And that's pretentious, and I know it is when I say that. But I think somebody out there might get what I'm trying to say when I say that, where I'm like, this film feels unapologetically Star Wars, and I like it that it does that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. 100%. If we even got this effort from Lucas in the first two, I think this would have been at least a solid.
Because it ditches the politics stuff and goes, all right, you want lightsabers? There you go. You want your fucking duels? There you go. You want a cool-ass droid and a wheel cycle running over shit? There you go.
Right.
This is my favorite card.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. It is hard for me to watch Grievous in this movie, knowing how awesome he is in the miniseries. Like,
it's hard to watch Grievous in this film, knowing he has to get bodied. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Don't do this to my man.
And it's like, you could have made him more badass if you had to kill him.
Also, there's some legitimately good lines. Again, hello. Is a fit, even though as cheesy as it is. Oh, hello there. Yeah. Oh, hello. That's like a nice reference to, Ben Kenobi later on in the series. Yeah. But as well as being cheesy and a great one-liner, it was like this. You know what this film has? It has Big Trouble in Little China energy on certain lines, where I'm like, this is a schlocky one-liner, but it's delightful. Where I was like, this feels cheesy. This feels great. And then Anakin, I hate you, feels very earned. And then Obi-Wan's really impassioned speech, you were the chosen one, I loved you like a brother. You feel pain. I really genuinely bought everything this film is selling me. I love this film, and I can say that even knowing it's not that great. My dad and I were baffled when a lot of people ranked this so low, and I'm like, I think it's because a part of it is, it's true, the prequels deserve a lot of the hate, but I think this film doesn't. I think this film, to me, is as good as the other original trilogy. It fits in. It fits in awkwardly. It's definitely the awkward, ugly-looking buddy of the bunch. But I'm like, you belong on the front of the bus with the rest of them, which is why it's in my top 3. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, that's essentially what a lot of people have to say about Revenge of the Sith. Is that it's definitely the highest peak of the prequel trilogy, but it's never going to reach this. It's never going to be the same caliber as the original trilogy. It never has, and it never will. For me, I do feel like this movie does a lot of good in the nature of, trying to make the prequel trilogy seem like it's like not entirely useless, because the first two movies definitely made it seem like it was for the most part. But this movie definitely kind of made it seem like, this trilogy exists and it needs to stay existent. And we have a reason for that. The main issues that I really have that really go for this movie is kind of the ending of the movie. And it kind of boils down to how they revealed, or even just revealing, Luke and Leia and Anakin as Darth Vader.
Oh, that was rushed.
Not only rushed, even just establishing those moments. Even if you say the words either Luke, Leia, or even show Darth Vader, you're doing something wrong, because that just takes away the magic of some of the magic of the original trilogy. Is that we never really knew originally that Luke and Leia were siblings, and we never really picked up on the fact that Anakin was Darth Vader. And that was kind of the magic of Star Wars, is that we got to kind of second guess ourselves and trying to ask ourselves, what is the relationship between, what is the mystery behind all these characters? And Revenge of the Sith just kind of kills those moments for me.
Well, I think
kills those vibes.
From the get-go, it's we knew that this was going to tell the story of Anakin Skywalker, and where Anakin Skywalker is going to turn up. So it's the trilogy overall is a spoiler for the original trilogy.
Right.
So
I was going to say that the prequel trilogy overall is pretty much just flawed because it does spoil like pretty much everything from the original trilogy, and they do take away the magic of what the original trilogy stands for. So, yeah.
So like that didn't bother me as much because first of all, like the Darth Vader I'm your father line was spoiled from me a long time ago. So that didn't really hit me like most people do with the whole Vader reveal.
Well, it's also like for me, if you're wanting to watch this is the hard part about these prequel films is that everybody can watch this series in multiple different ways, and I'm not really a huge fan of that. Like, some people watch this in terms of, like, watching it from episodes 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, instead of watching it in sequential order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then continuing 7, 8, 9 later on. The prequels don't really feel like in episode 1, 2, and 3. They just feel like they're coming off of a trilogy that exists later on, so that by the time you watch these movies in sequential order, they don't really feel as fleshed out. You know what I mean? Like, if you try watching this in numerical order, it doesn't really work out as well as watching it in 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's how I feel about prequels in general with Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter, and then The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Like, they don't feel like you can watch them chronologically from beginning to end because something feels off about the trilogy. So.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure we're done with Revenge of the Sith, are we not? Or do we have any final thoughts?
I feel pretty finished.
Moving on with the list. Here's the surprising thing. These next two movies here, numbers 3 and 4, actually have a tie with the same total number. So I had to think about, how am I going to break this tie? And the way that I figured it out is, even though there are an even number of lists, like rankings, that I based this list off of, I took each ranking and I based it on which film had it higher on their rankings. So like movie A or movie B, which one is higher? And I got only, so there's 8 lists, and I got a split between 5 votes and 3 votes, which is where I am placing these movies. So number 4, the first movie to be in a tie is The Force Awakens, with 71 points and only got 3 votes.
Oh, The Force Awakens.
So, any thoughts on The Force Awakens?
Wow.
I love this movie still. It is my favorite of the sequel trilogy still, and I know that's not a popular opinion for most people, but yeah, till this day, it's still my favorite of the Disney films. So, this movie helped reinvigorate my passion for Star Wars because I felt it was a bit dormant after Revenge of the Sith. But this movie just helped me bring my passion back for Star Wars overall. So that's probably why it's gonna hold a special place in my heart still. But overall, I just liked the new energy that JJ gave to the franchise. I thought this was a really good starting off point for new adventures, and I liked the new characters, Rey and Finn and Poe. I thought these were solid introductions, and Kylo Ren. I thought this was a great introduction for him. He ended up being one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, not just in the sequel trilogy, but I really liked JJ's direction, and I liked the questions he was bringing up and the stuff like that. So that's my general.
So, clocking at number 6 on my list, The Force Awakens was a delightfully safe film. Unlike Rogue One, it impacts me, so I'm like, this film definitely resonates with me. This film is I like it a lot, and I think that it deserves to be up in the top 4, or top 5, rather. It belongs up there. I feel like, for me, The Force Awakens is just kind of hindered by unambitiousness in some ways, where I'm like, yeah, this definitely feels like A New Hope all over again. But in a lot of ways, too, I'm like, this feels like a reasonable choice. I couldn't disagree with any choice this film made. I was like, no, this film introduces 3 characters. Well, has a great moment. It has Phasma in a moment that I thought was going to be cool where she got built up to something. Before when she had potential, before she got put in a compactor and then deleted on a spaceship. I thought that we were going to get a lot more from the mysteries this film sets up. I could definitely, after seeing Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, see some of the plays they were going for with this film. I definitely think that this film needed to see this film hurts so much because, in a way, I have to blame JJ for how The Last Jedi turned out, even because this film has so many open ideas that could only be articulated on in really in certain ways, where the routes that you could take with these stories were so limited. I can't blame Rian Johnson for what he did, really.
Yeah,
I think this film was just delightfully safe, though. I definitely enjoy it. I think that of the sequel trilogy, it's not my... Again, Rise of Skywalker is my favorite. This is now coming in at a smooth number 2, and it's definitely my safe pick. When I recommend the sequel trilogy, I'm like, this is the one to watch. And then if the other 2 don't really whet your appetite, then yeah. But this is a fine film. Definitely deserves a lot of respect. People that dismiss it as just a New Hope repeat underestimate how much damage the prequels did. I'm like, that was the only road that was safe. And I think this film took that road with class in a lot of ways, where I'm like, this is just a fun adventure. It doesn't really scream Star Wars at me, but it feels, like a nice little adventure. It feels like a little exploration that I kind of want to go on.
It does feel like that this movie also is probably like the safest way to come back in the Star Wars franchise, because it does it feels like it's the safest way to make this movie. Like it does feel like it is A New Hope, but I felt like it kind of had to, because of the damage that we had to live through the prequel trilogy, where it's just like, we kind of lost a few people after releasing that hunk of garbage, so we just got to remind people what they were originally watching. And if The Force Awakens having to be essentially a New Hope clone is not the worst idea. I think, it's probably the safest way to make a Star Wars film, just to bring back old memories from the past, especially if you're coming back off of a time period that takes place 32 years after the original. So I
do see what people are saying about the whole, it feels like A New Hope a lot, but I'm personally just really frustrated about hearing that over and over again, considering the fact that there are other movies that people love that repeat the formula of the first movie. Terminator, anybody?
I mean,
Terminator is the same movie.
The Force Awakens is the AC/DC of the Star Wars films, where it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I was like, you know what? That's fine.
Yeah, I'm just like, you can't say that these other films that do the exact same thing is okay, and then go to Star Wars and be like, it's the same thing, so it sucks. Like,
well, no, you can, though. You really can, because there are the other films. I think what it is that there's a certain margin of did you go into this idea in a way that really fascinates and interests people? This film definitely doesn't develop those ideas enough for a lot of people. I'm with you. I do think this film, people need to kind of put away the New Hope a little bit and go, hey, maybe just looking at this context-wise, and I'm not really the biggest fan of taking things totally with regards to context, but just thinking about the prequels and how we ranked them even. Like, we kicked the shit out of those movies. Imagine, again, my joy watching this film was like, wow, this isn't horrible. It's bland. It definitely tastes like a Star Wars sandwich, but it's what we needed.
It tastes familiar, but that's okay.
Listen, ramen is solid. I'm hungry and I needed some ramen. That's what this film is.
Plus, you got to take into account, this is how old we are. There are some people that have never seen a Star Wars film. So
I was gonna say, if you want to appeal to newer generations and introduce them to Star Wars, this is a good way to do it.
I just think that this film never got to capitalize on some of the ideas, and that's what I think hurts. And it makes Rise of Skywalker and Last Jedi hurt a lot too. Like, again, I really wish they sold me Poe, Finn, and Rey's trio a bit in this film. I wish the film had concluded with all three of them together and had really emphasized, yo, this is your fucking trio.
I'm actually okay with not having to establish right away that they're the trio. I'm glad that they waited until The Rise of Skywalker. Because
I would have given it a single movie. But, The Last Jedi to not extrapolate on that or go onto that idea, and then for The Rise of Skywalker to go into the idea for a while, felt all the more painful because I was like, damn it, this film really does want you to buy that connection.
Well, you gotta remember, until The Last Jedi, Poe and Rey never really met until the end of the second film of the trilogy.
They hung out once.
Yeah, so I was actually okay with them not establishing them as a trio just yet, because I was, like I said, we were hoping at the time that Last Jedi would establish them more, but it didn't really. So Rise of Skywalker had to play catch up. But because I am with you, dude. There was some stuff in band, and there's like some stuff that I knew wasn't exactly going to happen, but it made it look like it was going to, like Finn and Rey possibly turning into something, but that doesn't really happen, or Snoke having a bigger role that doesn't really happen, or the Knights of Ren that don't really.
Fuck the Knights of Ren! I forgot about them.
Yeah, so most of that stuff I was giving it a pass because this is the first of a trilogy, which is why we need to get away from the trilogy formula. But it's like this is the first installment of the trilogy, so I was okay with them leaving stuff open. It got me to catch me to catch the bait, but. Really?
I definitely was like, oh, delicious, I love this bait.
Yeah. But then when they reel it in, just, that's another story.
Surprise! It's The Last Jedi! And again, for Ruby and for you in the middle, I can understand it's enjoyable. But for me, I was like, oh no!
Yeah. But, the only major problems that I have with The Force Awakens is, Captain Phasma not doing anything, and Starkiller Base.
Cool.
Yeah, and Starkiller Base, I didn't care about it at all.
And Rey is too smart.
Death Star Part 3.
Yeah, I'm like, really? And then, Rey being too smart in this movie.
Rey is way too smart in her first movie.
But again, I was like, I'm sure they're going to explain it in the next movie.
I mean, Rey being a Palpatine justifies this retroactively, where I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah.
She is... Palpatine summoned a fleet of Star Destroyers, which, in my theory, are all piloted by those clone Snokes we saw. That's my theory. Is that those clones, they're all useful. They're piloting those damn Star Destroyers. That's why you can communicate with them. Just imagine a bunch of clone Snokes being like, meh. But if Palpatine is that strong, Rey being a Palpatine, I'm like, yeah, she should be busted. She should have some... But I think this film... Now, I don't use the term... No, I hate to bring this into this discussion. A lot of, the term Mary Sue got hawked around. And I'm definitely, this film reeks a little bit of that, where I'm like, I wouldn't say she's a Mary Sue, but the evidence for... The justification for someone to call her that is very present in this film.
Yeah, it feels very justifiable that she is... That she can be identified as a Mary Sue in some instances.
I'm like, I would never. I'm not going to go out of the way to ever call her that, but I'm like, if a person does, I actually do go. You were justified with this one film. Every other one, though, it's like her Rey has limitations and is explained as a more rounded character. But in this one, where she's piloting the Millennium Falcon with immediate ease, I was like, excuse me, or even for most characters that have affinity for machines, especially since she's not a Skywalker as well, which is kind of established thing with that lineage, I was just like, whoa, you have somebody who is coming in being a literal story breaker. Where I'm like, it definitely feel. And the thing is, too, also, another bitter pill I had to swallow, Finn not being a Jedi. This film had, again, I really wanted the Kyle Katarn story, or Katarn, I can't remember the character's name exactly, but the clone trooper become a Jedi story.
Yeah.
I wanted that story so bad.
Yeah.
This film teased that with he hears the voices of the life leaving. And again, he had him with the lightsaber, and he looks so good. And when he scores that lucky hit on Kylo Ren, who is untrained, and it's a great way to establish that Kylo Ren doesn't know what he's doing. Also, how dangerous a lightsaber fucking is, because no one's seen one in ages.
Right.
I really love the visceral nature of that scene. Where I was like, oh shit!
That's some gritty Star Wars fight. I like it.
Yeah, and then again, I like when Finn amps himself up and then gets immediately destroyed. Because Kylo Ren's like, fuck you, I have the Force! And then he just goes, oh shit, I'm owned! I'm dead! And then, of course, he gets saved. But it's definitely like, oh, rip.
Yeah, I felt Finn had, like, the most potential as a character other than Kylo Ren.
Like, Finn got Gohan so hard.
Oh, yeah. The shit out of him.
He could have been great, but was denied that passage.
Yeah.
At least it was sort of established, like, in The Rise of Skywalker, that Finn was Force-sensitive. Like, they never really left that.
I mean,
they never left it out of proportion that he wasn't Force-sensitive, you know?
Right. I'm glad that is there. And then that idea of it, like, there's anyone that could have the Force, along with that kid with the broom, it's still, you know, it's still...
Which I thought was a really interesting message in The Last Jedi for, like, the Star Wars universe.
I feel like that, like, The Last Jedi, that, like, little throwaway scene that anyone can have the Force, I feel like that isn't even a developed theme in that film, but it was kind of neat. I feel like that this film, I still have this dream where I wish that at some point I could have walked into the writer's room and been like, listen, we make a trilogy where there are two Jedi. Stop being cowards. Explore the implications of this.
Oh, yeah. You can have two Jedi. I mean, the rule of two stuff will be kind of weird, but it's like, you can do that.
I mean, listen, at one point there were two Sith and a whole army of Jedi.
Right.
Now,
and then Anakin came into picture and brought balance to the Force.
And now you can go, oh, he brought balance. Now shit can get all tipsy, topsy-turvy.
Yep. So I think that would have been interesting if both Finn and Rey were Force
Jedi. And also, it would have been interesting if Kylo Ren got redeemed and got to fucking live. It would have been nice if, like a lot of fantasy stories, it was the happy ending trilogy, which is what I actually kind of wanted. As perverse as that desire is for me, I really was like, you know, it really would have subverted expectations and had been interesting if we had, like, you know, certain characters have to fucking die. Again, Han's death in this film was actually not shocking, because Harrison Ford definitely was like, stop bringing me back to these movies, please.
Yep.
Stop. Yeah, also that made his appearance in The Rise of Skywalker all the more surprising.
Oh, yeah.
Harrison Ford, actually, interesting enough, in The Rise of Skywalker, Harrison Ford was not credited in the end credits.
Wait, what'd you say?
Harrison Ford was not credited in the end credits for Rise of Skywalker.
It makes sense, though. Probably to avoid leaks at some point.
Probably.
I guess. But he's an actual character in the movie, though. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like archive footage either. Like, it actually feels like a fleshed out sequence.
It could be that it is just like CG or some magic that Hollywood budgets could conjure. Yeah. I mean, again, Leia was Frankensteined into The Rise of Skywalker, which I think is that film's weakest spot.
I actually liked Leia's scenes.
Yeah, I think Leia's scenes in The Rise of Skywalker actually surprisingly worked out very well for me, and they utilized those archive footages very well. What the fuck kind of bizarre
dimension have I slipped into? I didn't expect that take at all.
Also, keep in mind that was the one thing I was worried about the most, is how they were going to incorporate Leia, and I think
Leia's best moment were her death in The Rise of Skywalker. and then when her body disappears as Kylo's body disappears. I think that was really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
well,
shocked.
Okay. Enough of the Rise of Skywalker for me.
Anyway, Force Awakens. Okay, so I gotta know, Beef. Were you one of those people shipping Finn and Rey together?
No. Actually, I was strongly opposed to that off top.
Oh, interesting. I
was like, this is too predictable.
I didn't think it was, because you don't really see romance in this, you know.
But my thing was that I'm a person that, again, studies a lot of media, like, for classes, and when I was an undergrad, I was definitely doing a lot of, like, analysis, and I was like, I kind of like that. I would like if Rey just didn't fall in love with anybody. I think that was interesting. And then with the Kylo thing, I was definitely like, that makes a lot of sense. I don't like it because Kylo's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
In terms of relationship. I'm like, yeah, she should have ended up with an abusive piece of shit. I mean, he dies afterwards. So the thing is, it was the greatest cop-out of all time. You get the final kiss, but then he fades away into oblivion, and we never see him again.
That's what like that kiss, like, acceptable to me. Because first of all, it wasn't Kylo, it was Ben. So I was
Ben. You did the younglings thing, but with a bunch of other Jedi.
So that's why I'm like, I don't know if I wanted Ben to still be alive because of all the damage that he did.
I know, see, for me, I'm like, the whole point about Star Wars is redemption. I just would have liked if there was a redemption story that didn't end in you taking the L.
I guess.
Like, that's my thing, is I'm like, if you want to do a subversive idea, what does it look like when a person comes back? Show me, what do the Jedi do with you? What happens? How does the Force work with a actually reformed person who is not at the brink of death?
Yeah, that could have been something different.
That's the type of subversion that I like to see, is like, what happens in the scenario?
Right. Back to The Force Awakens.
Any final thoughts on The Force Awakens before we move on?
I think The Force Awakens is delightful. That's all I'm going to say. That's a closing thought.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I was okay with Luke only being there for a few seconds. Luke
looking shocked.
The hype awakens, not The Force Awakens. That's all I got to say. So moving on to number 3. This is the other movie that got tied with The Force Awakens in score, but got more votes because more people thought that this movie was better than The Force Awakens. It's going to be D-WIZZLE's favorite movie, Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yes.
Respectable choice.
Yeah, so this movie also clocked in at 71 points. I personally am not overall thrilled on this movie, but I can accept it being like, it's viable. I'll watch it, but it's definitely, for me, it's definitely the weakest of the trilogy because it doesn't really set the foundation of it. Like, it doesn't really pique my expectations of like they tried to go bigger and more than Empire Strikes Back and original Star Wars, but sometimes, less is more, and that's kind of where this movie kind of struggles a little bit for me. I still like this movie. Like, this movie is at number 5 on my list. I don't have it super high, but, it's viable, it's watchable, and the Ewoks are the worst parts in the movie. I don't know why they ever existed in the first place. Fight me.
See, okay, this film, to me, establishes a lot of the hallmarks of Star Wars, the same way the rest of the of course, the original trilogy, of course, does that because it's the defining archetypes. But this film, to me, really did seal up perfectly that trilogy. Aside from the Ewoks, in the same rage that I feel towards Canto Bight, everything with the Ewoks is unnecessary. There was some cool stuff with Leia on a speeder bike. I definitely was like, I'm behind this. There's some cool stuff with Han.
Then you bring in Build-A-Bear Workshop on drugs into the equation, and then they're the ones that can save the Republic or the Rebel Alliance from the evil Galactic Empire.
Listen, we needed to have I forgot the name of the actor. He was in Willow. I forgot the name, but
Wicked?
like that dude.
Oh, you're talking about the actor's name?
Yeah.
Warwick Davis.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I would know. He's actually appeared in more than just Return of the Jedi. He actually appeared in Solo: A Star Wars Story too.
Yeah, Warwick Davis is pretty prominent.
He's a magical actor.
He is great, but like, listen, I think the Ewoks are adorable. Having Ewoks die for me was rough as a kid. I was like, no. Me as an adult, I'm like, this is cheesy, but it still hurts. It hurts a little. I'm like, ow. Ewoks were the beginning of the Star Wars formula where they have an alien species that they get you to care about for a film and then forget about them. And so began the poor Gungan tradition with the Ewoks. And I think that makes this film hurt in my eyes, is that this film definitely starts it off. But the most iconic scenes come out of this. Luke, Vader, and Palpatine squaring the fuck up is amazing.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That scene makes this film. Han struggling to get inside the base, firing off shots, makes this film. Endor, a fantastic setting, makes this film.
Now I know D-WIZZLE has a lot of things to say about this because he actually has Return of the Jedi at number 1.
All right, go.
Okay, so I know I'm in the minority on this, not only with these guys, but for most people whenever I talk about this movie. But my opinion still stands, and y'all can suck my lightsaber. This, to me, is the best Star Wars film of all time. It is my favorite Star Wars film to this day. It's just it just checked off a lot of boxes for me as far as what I love to see in Star Wars. As Beef said, this has some of the best moments of the entire saga for me when it comes to Luke and Vader and Sidious and that whole struggle with that. This has arguably the best space battle of the entire saga, even though we saw the Death Star a second time, and I still think it's unnecessary that we have it in this movie. It still made a fantastic set piece. I'm sorry, Beef. I actually still like the Ewoks.
Listen, I like them too. I just think that they are unnecessary and damage the film, but I adore them, and I would... And again, like I said, they hurt a little when they die. I'm like, ow. People hate the Ewoks. I respect them. I think they're a great little creature. I just think that the tradition they start with, everything that succeeds them, has become the death knell for a lot of the films in this franchise.
Yeah, no, and I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying, because like some of the stuff with the Ewoks was silly, like killing stormtroopers with rocks and sticks. That's rocks and sticks. And yeah, it does.
Sticks and stones will break your goddamn bones, stormtrooper.
Right.
You could hear me through the microphone just shaking my head at just hearing all this. Stormtroopers dying to sticks and rocks. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, it's like,
this is how the Empire dies.
Yeah, I piss off Ruby every time I talk about the movie, but once again, I say these are the same stormtroopers who can't blast R2-D2 20 feet in front of them, so they deserve to die from sticks.
The Stormtrooper Marksmanship Academy is a known prestigious institute that fails in every regard.
So, other than the Ewok stuff, I loved everything in Jabba's palace. I think that's some of the best puppetry and practical effects of the entire saga.
Yep.
I loved everything in Jabba's palace. People saying that it drags on too long, shut the fuck up. Every moment
also,
of that scene was
Luke
awesome.
Hype train. Everything with Luke is fucking hype.
Oh yeah, this is another thing Luke doesn't love for some reason, but Luke is on top peak in this movie. I love it.
I'm gonna say this. I like it when our protagonist gets to be the ace. I will die on that hill. I like again, this is why I like Rise of Skywalker. Rey got to be fucking rad. Yeah. I like that Luke gets to be really fucking rad and basically become a badass.
Yes, because like even though I was okay with how he was in the first two movies, like Luke was being a bitch in the first two films, but we knew it was because he was going to turn into something greater, and he does in this movie. So I'm glad we just finally see him confident.
Luke became a fucking Chad, is what happened.
Fucking exactly. He pulls out that green lightsaber, and I freaking nutted. It's freaking amazing. I love it.
See, for me, like, I like this version of Luke Skywalker. I'm not saying that this version of Luke is horrible, and it's like my least favorite of the bunch. Like, I'm not saying that at all. Like, this is a very viable Luke. I'm just not a huge fan of how he's so, like, he's written in a way of, like, he's so sure of himself, and like he feels way too zen throughout the movie. Like, he's supposed to be recognized as a Jedi Knight instead of a Jedi Master throughout the movie, because that's what it feels like it's coming off as to me. Like, he's not. He feel like his emotions like kind of feel a little dull, even when he's like explaining like the sister stuff to Leia, and even like finding out that Leia's his sister. He's just like, Leia's my sister, and then has this dull expression of just. So I'm just okay, like, wait, like I'm with you. Like, I don't think that Luke and Leia should have been siblings in the first place. It's a twist, but like, I don't know. And then when he's explaining the stuff to Leia, even it's just like,
Leia goes, so we still smashing or not?
You and Leia being brother and sister, that you didn't feel that was 100% the plan from the beginning, but there was something about the ending that made it okay, or it's like it added to the story. You know, by the time we got to the Vader, Sidious, and Luke stuff, that stuff was okay, and that it actually helped.
I was going to say, by the time we get to Vader and Sidious with Luke being with them, you know, he gets better from there. It's just everything beforehand is just like, I'd rather see Luke be a Jedi Knight right now than a Jedi Master. You know.
Now, okay, so that whole thing. So, you know, this is not Anakin, right? So
I know.
This is not Anakin. So it's like...
And this isn't Last Jedi either. I know which movie I'm watching right now.
So it's like, you know, most of the Jedi acted like this. So it's like he would pick up the tendencies of how people act and how he's, like, disconnected from the world, but then he learns to have more emotions, because that's the type of stuff that led to the end of the Jedi in the Republic days. So it's like, that's what I actually loved about Luke, is because he was above the mistakes of the Jedi Order. It's like he was trying to make up for the mistakes that his father and the Jedi Order have done. You know, that stuff that Obi-Wan and Yoda were blind from in the prequels. Sorry, that was my laptop if you heard that. No, but yeah, so that's the type of stuff I love, which is why it's just hard for me to watch certain moments in The Last Jedi, because it felt like he learned those mistakes, and it felt like he wasn't going to do the same mistakes, you know? So I don't know. That's just how I see Luke. And also, I actually liked Leia and Han together, because in the first two movies, I'm like, well, why is this happening? Why is this happening? But I actually like them together now in this movie, similar to how I felt with Anakin and Padme in the Revenge of the Sith. So, and Han, I actually, because I wasn't really crazy about Han overall in the first two, but in this movie, I actually thought I actually liked him. So, that's my whole thing with it.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Beefaloh, before we get moving on?
Oh yeah, the best ending in Star Wars 2. It was great. It made me cry. I love it. Everything.
It's a fantastic ending.
Yes.
All right, but closing thoughts. Not really any further, because I think for these last couple films, I think they're universally beloved, so it's a little harder for me to have anything controversial to say other than they're delightful.
Oh, I got some controversial stuff to say.
What the fuck are you about to do?
You'll see.
Oh, no.
All right, so as we're wrapping up Return of the Jedi, we're only down to 2 movies left. For some fans, we may already figure out what the top 2 is going to be ordered as, but for those of you who wouldn't know by now, number 2 is going to be A New Hope at clocking in at 87 points. So the
I'll
OG,
let you guys gush.
The OG definitely still one of the best to this day. Definitely set the foundation of what is to come in the future. It still remains as one of the best surprises of all time, because originally, going into production for this movie, this is actually one of the worst production processes of all time. Like, one of the worst.
Yeah, no,
but then
it's
ended up becoming this massive surprise to everybody, and everyone ended up loving this movie. So it's just like, wow, this movie actually works. Like, if this movie was not liked by anybody, this franchise would have never happened. So it's pretty much like thanks to us, like, because of this franchise staying alive. So
I think with this film, A New Hope is just... I like A New Hope a lot. I think I enjoy whiny Luke quite a bit.
Yeah, I do too. I actually appreciate this version of kicking off Luke Skywalker and him having to go through the loss of his aunt and uncle and having to talk about his father. Nothing about his mother, though, which I thought was a little bit awkward. But, regardless of that, I do feel like, this was a nice kickoff to Luke Skywalker going forward.
That's the story for another time. Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
I just fucking imagine, like, Luke's mom and dad. Luke's mom and dad, the sentiments. Let's talk about anime, and let's talk about Anakin and Padme's more intimate details in this Disney Plus series.
Oh, God.
How did they fuck? Sorry. That was my off-color joke. That's terrible. I think Uncle...
Star Wars story.
I fucking Star Wars tale. A Star Wars tale. I think, though, with this film, I think that it's an interesting little story of how a hero has to rise to the circumstances. I love the archetype of Ben Kenobi as a mentor. I think that the low-budget nature of this film works to its advantage in a lot of ways. The struggle between Ben Kenobi and Darth Vader, which would be CGI'd up as hell now. In fact, there's a YouTube video series that basically...
That shows a much better choreographed and much faster-paced version of the fight between Obi-Wan and Vader,
like a little
which is amazing.
Fan, it's like a fan reconstruction of that scene with high-budget effects, or like a little, like... I'll probably post a link in the comments at some point in the future, but... It was a little like video that I thought it's Uncanny Valley, but it's an interesting exploration of the scene. But I think that the original just gets sliced in half and fade into some cloth kind of was more resolute and interesting, and it introduced a lot of intrigue, and it made Jedi feel immortal. And again, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. It's a fantastic line preceding what would be a giant L.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this film sets up a lot of fantastic intrigue. The characters are cool. Han is one of the greatest, like, badass characters in cinema.
Yeah, by far.
He's charming, he's smug, he's delightful. I think that him and Chewie have a great... Again, this film, to me, feels like what... like. Funnily enough, the only other film where I feel the sense of, like, space camaraderie, at least, not the only film, but a film that comes to mind immediately is Guardians of the Galaxy, where I'm like, I instantly get the chemistry of these characters. I think the CGI, the claymation chess is a great moment.
Yeah, that was a really interesting sequence. So they used claymation for that.
Well, it's environment, and not to bring up the meme term, but it is environmental storytelling where you get the sense that the Millennium Falcon is the ship kitted out with little entertaining gags and bits, and Luke's trying to test out the lightsaber, and I don't know. There's a really great, because this film feels like a person taking your hand and guiding you into this world, which is, I think, what the original trilogy does that the other films forget to do is to give you a character who really does get to firsthand witness and really relish a world outside their own, because Rey never gets this because she's a little bit too powerful and too acclimated and has heard too much. And Anakin never gets this because he's too busy angsting and drowned out by romance subplots. But this original trilogy has the perfect protagonist in Luke just being the most milquetoast, where he's just very plain, very easy to slip into. And I think that works to its advantage. I wouldn't want every Star Wars film to have a character like Luke, but I think, wow, there's a great sense of wonder that this film really manages to accomplish really quickly.
Right.
I think that New Hope is really, really great, and I think that's what makes
it's such a magical movie to experience, especially even in today's times.
I think even for its cheesy little flaws and the clear shortcuts they took and some of the errors, like I think this is the film with the stormtrooper who bonks his head on the door.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, even those little things I make note of, or some of the cheesy bits, I think that this is cool. And also, let's shed some love for the Imperial side here. Darth Vader's badassery begins here.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Even though he wasn't really like as fleshed out as a villain, this film made it seem more of like Grand Moff Tarkin was sort of like the main villain, whereas Darth Vader was just used as like a side villain. But they definitely utilized him in the next film. But definitely like his introduction in this movie is definitely like some of the most powerful sequences we've seen in cinema.
Well, Vader's the dragon. That's what he is. He's what Kylo is, or what Dooku also is for Palpatine, where it's the dragon. He's the shield and the sword for.
Until he's let off the leash in the next movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then he becomes the goddamn enforcer and is like, I'm going to fucking brutalize my child, and I have no fear.
Yep. That pretty much just sums up Darth Vader as a whole.
I will brutalize you until you learn to love the dark side, you fool.
Yep.
But I think that Vader gets a really great intimidating presence in this film. I think that the design of his armor is so impressive, despite David Prowse, the physical model for Vader, which also it's very funny to hear the scenes without James Earl Jones' voice dubbed in.
I know, like, because a lot of people were like filming this. Everyone was like, "Really? That's Darth Vader?" Like,
but then they put in James Earl Jones, and I'm like, "That's Vader."
Yeah, you bring in James Earl Jones with this sort of Michigan sort of tone to his voice, and it's just like, okay, yeah, this is Vader.
Oh yeah, Mufasa himself.
James Earl Jones is just one of those voices. I don't think. I mean,
he's just a natural. Saying, that's all he really is.
The only thing is that when he inevitably passes away, when he introduces a new Sith, the only person I could see succeeding him is Keith David in terms of just raw awesome when speaking. I feel like we need a light side equivalent, and so Morgan Freeman could be the good Jedi. That's a very aged, old character. But
Morgan Freeman should voice an older Mace Windu or something. You know, who knows?
If only Mace got to live.
If only he got to live.
Or maybe he is.
I mean, listen, if they bring back Darth Maul, it would be funny if they were like, no, there was a Jedi that was alive the whole time, and then Mace emerges with a fucking walker and a cane.
or we wait until Star Wars Theories Vader series with Episode 2 when he brings back Mace Windu.
Yeah, hopefully he could still do it.
Oh yeah, and I'm pretty sure he will at some point.
Yeah,
but A New Hope is just a delightful film. I think that it deserves it's earned its reputation as a really great science fiction film.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great fantasy film. I do think that talking about the series' broader scale as a whole, the whole hero's journey thing that every other film now has to incorporate because of the template this film has laid out is a little bit to their detriment, but to this film's success. Mm-hmm. But I do think that this film's great, and I really think that it's held up quite well.
So here's where I say some stuff controversial.
All right, hit me with the bus.
So I'll start off with I pretty much agree with most of what you guys were saying. Like, what I really liked about this movie is that it still appreciated simplistic storytelling. When it comes to a lot of blockbusters and big budget films today, they feel like they have to overcomplicate the plot for us to care. But seeing a movie like this where it's just focused on these three main characters fighting evil, and it's like all of their backstories are easy to follow, and you like seeing them all together. They have nice chemistry, and the plot's not too complicated. I wish more blockbuster films took what this movie did, and not try to overcomplicate things just because you want to make it bigger, badder, more intense. And like I said, this is George Lucas's best film when he has to work under a budget. So I think that's what most directors do their best work when they have to work under constraints. So, and this was the shining example. I think George Lucas did a great job with the direction, and even the dialogue. Bad. There was a couple of stuff that was iffy, but for the most part, it's like these people actually felt like people. They actually reacted how people were supposed to react, and on the table, stuff was there. But watching this along with the other films in the saga, I don't know. I just personally feel like they're like the future installments after this expanded more on what A New Hope established. Like, this movie feels like a cinematic pilot episode. It's a good cinematic pilot episode. It's damn good, but it's like, to still call this the best Star Wars films, I don't know if I could say that. But I definitely do respect that it laid the foundation for all the movies to come afterwards. But also keep in mind, this is not the first movie that I saw, so I don't feel the magic and passion that purists do. But because the first movie I saw was The Phantom Menace, that was what got me into Star Wars. So I don't feel the same love as most people, but I definitely do respect that it's laid the groundwork. And I just liked how overall it was structured. It just felt very unique at the time. The emphasis is at the time. Today, I just feel like there are some stuff in A New Hope that they just lightly touched on that the future films expanded more, and it made it more of an interesting narrative. But with this one, it just felt like it was laying the foundation. That's why, controversy on my list, I put The Force Awakens over this, because not saying that it's like an overall better film, but it's like, if you ask me which one would I prefer to watch, it would probably be The Force Awakens, because there's more to it. There's more to its plot than this one is, and there's more intrigue with the lore than this one does. Like I said, I feel like this only works as a foundation setter, as a pilot, instead of just a film by itself. And even though, ironically, this is like the only film that has like a beginning, middle, end, it doesn't feel like it's setting up for another movie. So that's kind of the ironic thing, because they didn't know they were going to make 2 more movies after this. But that's overall how I feel about New Hope. I do enjoy the movie, really good, but I don't think it's not one of my favorite films of all time.
Right, and the thing about that as well is that The Force Awakens had more of like that entertainment value sort of to it than A New Hope did, and The Force Awakens was definitely a better made film. The production, going into production for The Force Awakens was definitely a lot better than A New Hope. I'm pretty sure pretty much almost any Star Wars film going into production was pretty much better than whatever A New Hope could have done, because going into production for A New Hope, like I said before, was just not all that good. There were so many issues, and everyone was having doubts. Like, nobody could understand the script all that much. Like, the story just didn't make sense to most people.
George Lucas's wife came in riding on a horse and was like, "I need to fix this, honey."
And yeah, that was the other thing. And But the thing that I have this higher than The Force Awakens. I actually have A New Hope and The Force Awakens where they actually are. I have A New Hope at 2 and Force Awakens at 4. The thing about A New Hope that makes it better than Force Awakens, though, is just how magical it is to see a movie made the way it is for a 70s movie and having it be, like you said before, setting the foundation for a franchise that they never expected that it was going to even be a franchise. Because they made it in a way of, like, if this was the only film ever made, like, if this was just, like, Star Wars just by itself, you could still, like, appreciate it. You could still see, like, this is the only film that you could tolerate. Like, you didn't really need to see any other film. But then as you start to, as we start to get more movies and we get more story and character development and information that sometimes we never even knew of before, the franchise starts to develop and evolve into it's just something magical. So that's why I set A New Hope higher than The Force Awakens. It's just because of setting the foundation of, setting up a franchise that was never even meant to be. That's one of the magical things about this movie is that even for its time, the effects, weren't really that. The effects actually for its time in the 70s were actually some of the best practical effects we've seen in any movie ever. So, and to have the franchise build and grow and evolve into more practical effects and to see where we could go with that, that's what makes A New Hope even more special, is just setting the foundation.
I definitely agree with that, and I definitely see why people love this movie.
All right. Now, I'm going to keep this brief because you've been here for 3 hours.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think we're just about ready to move on to number 1. I'm pretty sure we all know what it is. It's going to be Empire Strikes Back.
But it's been a delightful discussion. I got to say, gentlemen, it's been a wonderful discussion.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Let's close it out.
I was going to say, number 1, without surprise, it's going to be Empire Strikes Back, sitting at a whopping 93 points out of all of the other rankings. So, Empire... Oh, gosh. This movie was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
This is said to be one of the best sequels ever made. And no one even... I don't even know if anybody even expected a next episode after the original Star Wars. Like, I don't know if anybody ever expected Empire Strikes Back to even exist.
I mean,
they may not have expected it, but they definitely wanted it.
But they wanted it.
I think people were ready for it, especially the success of it. That's my yawn. My apologies. I think that Empire, I remember distinctly, the plan was for it to be it was meant to be a trilogy. But it was if this succeeds, you get a sequel. And then Star Wars just exploded. And then they were like, all right, we can follow up with the real good one now. And then Lawrence Kasdan on the writing staff. And then you had everybody polishing up the script to the best of their ability. And then you have one of the greatest film twists of all time, which came out of a spur of the moment thing, if I recall correctly.
Oh yeah.
Even going into shooting that scene, Mark Hamill, moments before, still didn't even believe that Vader was Luke's father. Moments before, he read that scene, and even Mark Hamill was baffled. So if you can make Mark Hamill baffled, you know you're doing something right.
Well, I mean, it makes sense though, because it does seem left field, but because it's left field, but it doesn't necessarily violate anyone's logic, and we're not. And the thing is, Star Wars has only so much lore. And also, you just go, whoa! I have to buy this now, right. And it makes sense that bed soon. No, it makes sense though that with. The way Obi-Wan is Anakin is dead, it makes sense that what he meant was more figurative than literal. So, in some ways, it is literal because Anakin definitely he's not the same after that trip to the magma jacuzzi.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I just think that The Empire Strikes Back. I put it as number 1, obviously, because it was like I was just like, I can't think of a better follow-up to a film, really. I mean, so my dad compared Avengers Endgame to Empire Strikes Back, and I think that's a really good example, or a comparison to make. But I was like, even Endgame doesn't quite hit me the way that this film did, where I was like, this is a bus.
Maybe it's more like Infinity War versus Empire.
Yeah, I can see that because...
Infinity War. I meant to say Infinity War. I meant to say Infinity War, yeah. Where this is like Infinity War to Empire. Like, Infinity War definitely has the same level of shock as Empire does. But I gotta say, like, even Empire is just still impacting more. When I just think of, like, Wham sequels, where, again, Luke is clinging for dear life at the bottom of a fucking, like, upside down television, like, set, like, I don't know what the thing is, but it's just like a little pole with his hand lopped off, and I was like, oh my god, what a pathetic position to be in. This film really does put, like, this film to me is which is why I think I put The Last Jedi at, but is essentially the opposite position of this list. Is one film to me is the perfect example of how to have a bad guy wins type ending, but have a little flake of hope there, like kind of nestled amongst the madness. You introduce characters that are kind of cool. Again, Lando works as a, like, sleazy, smuggling trader guy. He's smooth as hell.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And
I think Bespin's visuals are amazing.
Yes.
This was really to me, the whole, like, taking advantage of planetary, like, sets really took off. Again, Bespin is a fantastic set. And I think that the tension between the heroes dealing with Darth Vader, who could kill them all with a flick of his wrists, and having to sit with them after being betrayed, is really intense moment. I'm like, this actually has it plays everything out perfectly. There's hopelessness, but there's still a sense of, like, the heroes are going to make it through. This film really does deliver all I wanted to deliver.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've got much more to say. I just think it's a wonderful film.
Even a lot. Some more things to talk about is the Dagobah sequences with Luke training with Yoda.
Oh yeah, incredible! Yeah. Incredible. Yoda is such a great Star Wars character.
He is definitely one of the best characters as a Jedi mentor.
Yeah, and I just like
what they're trying to do with the character, because we never really had Luke go through any training in A New Hope, so he kind of had to prep himself up if he ever had to fight off against Darth Vader. Which, speaking of fighting Darth Vader, the Luke and Vader fight sequence is the best lightsaber fight of the franchise, in my opinion.
I definitely see why you say that. Like,
I see why you say that,
because not only is there tension involved, and you're like, even watching it today, if I was watching it like right now, my heart would still probably be racing, because I still probably wouldn't know what's going to happen. Like I know that Luke is clearly outmatched against Vader, but how long is he going to survive?
Yeah, it feels it's very much a survival mission in that sequence, and I think that's great.
Yeah. And not only that, it's like the choreography, like, suits both of the characters, like, very well. And the character moments to be had in this sequence is definitely some of the best character moments that we've seen in any Star Wars film in general. Like the Vader reveal that Vader is Luke's father is, definitely iconic, and something that we can consider as unexpected and something we've never really seen before, or never really, again, expected to happen, but it happened. The movie had the balls to tell us that Vader is Luke's father.
I think it's just such a cool twist that came as, like, this is an idea I have. Like, man, what a way to not be aware of, like, how much of, like, impact that you'd end up having on media as a whole.
Yeah, even though like the twist, I knew about the twist before watching this movie, but I could definitely imagine how people reacted the first time seeing this in theaters. Like this clearly shook the foundation.
I could just imagine everyone watching this movie in 1980 just screaming in the theater when they heard that line, "I am your father." Like everyone just losing their mind just listening to that line.
I feel like my dad describes a similar sequence where he was like, "Yeah, I remember people freaking out about that."
Mm-hmm. That's just one of those sequences where it's just like watching Endgame and Infinity War. It's just like we can tell people in the future like how we've experienced these moments.
Fucking Infinity, yeah. I think it's
the same thing with Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, where it's like it's hard to imagine it because we know it now, but like I think my reaction in watching Infinity War, where I was just like, "What the fuck?" And my jaw basically dropped. Like I think I gasped. I was like, "Holy shit!" Yeah, I think that's what Empire Strikes Back was for some people. Because Luke takes that hard L. If he loses, someone's got to give him a hand because he certainly doesn't have one of his own.
Right.
And then it was like at that point, it's like the story is more complicated than what people thought it was going to be. They thought it was just going to defeat the bad guy and everything will be okay. But now that you know that your bad guy is actually your father,
he wants you to join him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's conflict at that point. Any final thoughts on Empire Strikes Back before we wrap up tonight, guys?
So I know some people are probably wondering, why is this number 2 on my list?
Yeah, D-WIZZLE has this at number 2 on his list, by the way.
Okay, so I will agree to an extent that Empire is overall a better made film than Return of the Jedi, and structure-wise, it feels more sure of itself than Return of the Jedi at certain moments. But for me, I feel like with this movie, I have to be in a certain mindset to watch it. Like, I don't feel like this is a movie I could put on over and over again like I can with Return of the Jedi. And maybe that was the intention of the tone of the movie, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But it's just like, overall, I felt like Return of the Jedi balanced the themes more than it did in Empire. Like, Empire felt much more like a tragedy. And maybe it just comes to personal preference that, I want to feel a little bit more hopeful than what it was doing, but this is the dark middle story, so I understood what it was going for. Also, there was some stuff here and there that kind of annoyed me, like the Han and Leia romance. I didn't like that at all, and also that you're playing with my emotions by having Leia kiss Luke in the beginning of the movie, then it just goes to Han and Leia together. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then, of course, that's all messed up in Return of the Jedi when we find out Luke and Leia are brother and sister. But it's like, that type of stuff frustrated me. And then just, I think it's...
That's just pretty much the extent of his negatives. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think that is the extent of my negatives. And it's like, as far as the ending, yeah, I just feel like Return of the Jedi had a better ending than Empire. Not to say that Empire's ending was bad at all. It's actually really good, but it's just, I felt like the emotions hit me more in Return of the Jedi than it did in Empire. Maybe if I didn't know about the twist in this going into watching this movie, I probably would have liked it more. But the fact that I knew some stuff going into it, I didn't feel that emotional impact that I should have, probably.
I was going to say, if you saw the original trilogy first instead of the prequels, you probably would have had the prequels a lot lower than you thought.
Yeah.
I think I remember Phantom Menace as a child, but I also simultaneously remember, because I don't know which one came first for me. I simultaneously remember Empire and New Hope first as well. So I can't. It's weird. I think Phantom might be my first Star Wars film, but I don't think I can remember it being my first. So I'm not even quite sure anymore.
Yeah, I think Phantom was my first Star Wars film as well, but then I keep getting told by my parents saying that they showed me A New Hope first, and I'm just like, I don't remember it.
I mean, yeah, I'm like, I don't remember, but I remember which one resonated with me more, which was Phantom, but I'm definitely like, A New Hope certainly is my favorite of the two, and even with the hindsight, even with age bias in effect here, I'm still like, oh my god, yeah, New Hope, Empire and New Hope, great films.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm going to close it out with, I just cannot get over the fact that, like, it's unanimous. Everyone's like, Empire is a great sequel. It really is one of those films where I'm like, it's more than being delightful. It is stands on its own 2 feet great film. And I think for a lot of Star Wars films that I think I call great or call good or call like anything, a lot of Star Wars films really fall more into like what I'd say would be the average or mediocre in terms of structure and setup. But I think Empire really is the one where I'm like, even more than any other film, I can stand by this one and say that this is just a great movie all around and is like B+ to A- grade, where I'm like, this is just unambiguously great.
Yeah, like this is definitely one of the best sequels ever made. Like as we said about New Hope, there's like sequels to big budget blockbuster movies that miss the
humbleness.
Yeah, they miss what Empire gives. Like what they knew the right amount of stuff to give to the sequel. They knew what to add on. They knew what to take away. They just knew what they needed to.
They knew. I think it was a really great experiment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it happened.
But then it did. It worked out great.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all, it was like a chef going off in the kitchen and hitting some ingredients and going, "Oh shit, this is delicious!"
Right.
Yeah, but that's all I gotta say. All right, I've got to sleep. I got work tomorrow.
Yeah,
I got class in the morning.
Yeah, and with that,
gentlemen, this has been delightful.
Yeah, that pretty much wraps up our ranking of the Star Wars franchise. Again, this is a very this is the way I'm wanting to do future rankings, like the MCU, the DC Extended Universe, and like Pixar and whatnot. So I'm definitely planning on doing
the MCU one.
What?
I would be pumped for that one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Take 5 hours. You know I'm gonna do the DC one.
DC. Yeah, that's gonna take a little while because D-WIZZLE's more of a
DC
guy.
would be me bullying every film. I can't do that one.
But anyways, that's gonna be it for the night. So if you guys enjoyed this format, be sure to put a like on this stream, and also if you guys haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn the notification settings to all so you can get notified on when I upload or stream on my channel. And if you guys like what I do here, there's definitely something you'll enjoy over on my social media, such as Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Discord, which I have links to down below in the description for you, so you guys can go check that out. And also thank you to D-WIZZLE and Beefaloh for joining me on this stream today. It's been a blast chatting with you two about a Star Wars that we're all going to enjoy.
Thank you. It's been a delight.
Thanks for having.
Thank you for having us.
If you guys also haven't done so already, go subscribe to D-WIZZLE. He definitely needs the support. He's on the road currently to 100 subs, and it would really mean a lot to us if you guys go sub to him. But with all that being said and done, I'm pretty sure that wraps up everything for the night. So thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you guys at some point in the future. Have a good night, guys.
Bye, everyone.
McClanky.
I hate you so much. All right, and that is it.